Thank everyone for their attendance. I think we know that Shannon is not going to be in attendance. She's at spring break. I'd also like to let it be known that Mr. Wood and I both became grandfathers last week within a day of each other. He had a little grandson. I had a little granddaughter. The crazy thing is they were side by side in the nursery.
Too funny.
Isn't that something? All right, and we're waiting for our council member to have another beautiful child as well. All righty. Well, that's a good point. We'll go ahead and get started with the city council briefing. The first one's on the city hall, city council space program review. Tom, you going to run with this, or Jim, Dave, you going to say something? What do you want to do?
Well, we're back trying to get into another phase of design, and so Tom's going to lead us along with Josh and Tony from Mosley, and they're going to focus in on the city council space. So,
Glad to have you here.
Thank you, sir. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, city manager, guests, thanks for being here today. Again, we've talked a number of times about the new City Hall project. A couple of folks are here with me today. Mr. Barry Shockley, our facility management administrator from the city. Mr. Tim Oliver, who's our project manager for this project. Tony Bell and Josh Bennett from Mosley Architects. And I'd also like to introduce Mr. Gary Arnold, who is a new member to the city. He's our senior architect. Collectively, we're working this project. Well,
we're glad to have all of y'all here.
as you'll remember, briefly, back in October, we had a approval of a resolution selecting option 2, which was to proceed with design of a proposed new city hall to the south of this existing building, and making sure that we did not impact the gazebo and the park along George Mason Drive. How big's the building? So we did a space needs assessment in November of 2016, and we repeated that in August of 2017. We had a special meeting in there with Councilman Wood and the Vice Mayor in July. We did our space needs assessment determined 149,000 square feet. 50 years from now, we got a lot of feedback that we weren't really sure enough that we were willing to spend the money to build that size of building. So we got direction from the city manager to build a 134,000 square foot building, or to design a 134,000 square foot building within the current appropriated budget of $50,250,000, looking at possible expansion from the 134 to 149 if in fact growth did occur as we think it could. Again, in July of 2017, the group here really met with Councilman Wood and Vice Mayor Jones to take a look at 3 things: the informal session conference room, which is what we're in here today, what would replace this, the formal council chambers, and then also mayor, vice mayor, city council member offices and meeting spaces. So where are we in the process? And it's kind of important for you to understand that right now. When we hire an architect to design a building, and that's what we're in the design phase right now, we're in what's called the schematic design phase. What has to happen first is the designer has to validate the program to make sure that everyone going in here is getting exactly what they need and that the square footage for each person is what it needs to be. We have validated the program with every other occupant of the building with the exception of council, and we're back here today just to make sure that the square footage assignments for the spaces that you need are appropriately accounted for. Once we get through that, we proceed towards concept design. We take all of those square footages, we build floor schemes, schematics, we develop the footprint of the building, we make basic decisions on is it 2-story or 3-story, and then that progresses floor by floor, and we intend to come back and see you a couple of more times. So we're here today to confirm city council space needs. We were meeting in February, we got bumped a week. Then we plan to come back and see you in April with a more refined design of the entire building, which will have such things such as 3D renderings, the ability to walk through spaces. And by time we get into May, we will have completed schematic design. And between May and August, we then develop the design documents, which is when we really get into the details of what's in each space, layout, color, furnishings, that whole deal. And then finally, we go with construction document development, which is in the later fall. Then the fifth and sixth phases of design are solicitation and award of a construction contract, and then overseeing the design process during construction. So I'd like to invite Tony Bell to come up and talk to you from Mosley. He's going to walk you through this program development meeting, much as he would for any of the other clients in the building.
Tony, we're glad to have you.
Thank you, Mayor. So Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, something like this is what you're going to see as we progress through the design phase. You know, I don't have renderings to bring before you today. We're really only talking about space, the amount of space that's required. And as we move forward into design, into the design development phase, we'll then be looking at finishes and configurations and furniture of the individual spaces. But we're not going to talk about that today.
And Tony, that's not a concept for this building.
Yes, that is a good clarification, Tom. That is by no means a representation of what we're envisioning for Virginia Beach's City Hall. That is merely a representation of the level of development of design you will see as we move things forward. So you'll be able to pick the colors and the furniture and the three-dimensional amount of space that we envision, okay? But we're not going to talk about that today, okay? Today is strictly going to be focused on space needs, all right? So why are we here? As Tom said, schematic design starts with this confirmation of the space needs. So today we're going to review the space needs for City Council, the Mayor's office, the City Manager, and the staff that serve all of them. And then we're going to revise or confirm that this is the right amount of space for your function in the building. And as Tom said, we've already done this for every other city function who's going to be housed in City Hall. Everyone else has given us the green sign, and our goal today is to get that green light from you. Make sense? So, no further ado. Largest space we have for City Council is the council chambers of 4,800 square feet. But we also have what we refer to as room 234 conference room. That's the space we're in right now. Obviously, it's going to be a little larger as we move into the new. We'll have a kitchenette adjoining this space. We'll have the mayor's office of 300 square feet, the vice mayor's office of 300 square feet, 9 council offices of 90 square feet, 2 conference rooms of 144 square feet. The purpose of those is to meet with small groups of citizens that would not maybe fit in a one-on-one situation in that private office of 90. And then one office for the assistant to the city council, and that room would hold 2 staff. So what would that look like? Ms. Henley, your question?
Yeah, so we're gonna get an assistant?
Yes, so that would be Miss Debbie Collins and Miss Judy Farrow.
Oh,
Well, that's the
okay,
mayor.
mayor's
I got
office.
it.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
Is that 2 individual
Shucks.
FTEs?
Two individuals, FTEs, in one office.
Okay, so, members of council, as I prepare the 19 budget, I've added an FTE to the city manager, city council staff to add a second full-time FTE. Remember, Debbie and Judy are hot seating a single FTE position. And this is a constituency affairs type person, someone, we recognize that the mayor occupies virtually 90% of all the activities that are going in there, and that we heard loudly at the city council goal setting workshop the need to have more attention, ability to support you in your town hall meetings, to ability to download your phones with your texts, ability to coordinate, someone additional beyond what Nancy's doing from constituent affairs and city manager related functions, because potholes, they come into you, concern about potholes and down signs come into you as much as they come into me and the city managers. So I've added that FTE, and you'll be seeing that in the manager's submission. So we wanted to make sure that there was space for 2 FTEs inside this office.
I was just gonna say, I'm looking at the design on the next page, and you've got it set up as a table like this with media in the same place. Just for what whenever this gets built in 2023 or what, for the person sitting in this seat, I can't see half the time, so you might want to reconfigure that.
Okay.
I mean, I can't see what's up there.
So perhaps-
It's moving all around.
I'm sorry about that.
Oh, I'm always having to tell Jim, move your big shoulder, Jim.
So you
bigger
might
and
want to
more
reconfigure
screens.
that for council
That's,
consideration.
that's very good input.
By height.
So perhaps a flared table, something that has canted sides to allow everyone to see the front of the room.
Well, also,
Even just another
what I'm
TV.
familiar with is bigger and more screens. Almost all the briefings I go to have screens on that side, the front, and the back. I mean, that is just pretty common, all the things I go to the Pentagon. There is no shortage of display screens.
Okay, good feedback. So the components of this space we have discussed previously is 60 people, meeting 2 to 3 times a week, seating for 45 people in 3 elevated rows, audio and video recording capabilities, and space for media viewing. That's something that you don't have here in this existing 234. And the existing 234 is about 700 square feet. So we're talking about, 75% larger than the space you're in now. And as you can see, you have a table with seating for 14 around it, some spectator seating on one side with tiered seating on the other. Once again, something you don't have now. A media corner that they can come and go without disturbing the meeting proceedings. And a kitchenette open directly off of the space. Now, obviously, we're not building this tomorrow, okay? And there will be a lot of decisions that we make moving forward. But what we're looking for confirmation for you today is this generally the right size for the space to meet these functions?
Are the dashed lines for wheelchairs, is that what they represent?
Yes, sir. Yes, Mr.
And does-
Councilman Moss.
And does that match up with what the current standard is as a proportion of the number of seats?
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay, thank you.
And the ADA also requires that those spaces be dispersed throughout the seating area. So that's why we have 2 on the low side and 1 on the high side.
Yes, Jim.
Is that adequate space for TV cameras there?
We said 2 to 3. So the thought would be 2 to 3. Now, obviously, they could spread out, Councilman Wood, along that wall, and you can remove those chairs as needed, depending on whatever function may be going on that day. And the clerk space would be here. It's the current plan.
Or where that door is that an egress and ingress for fire?
This here?
Yes.
No, no, sir.
Okay.
So you've got 1, 2, 3,
Where the
4
media
egress doors. You've got 4 egress doors. This door would not be a required egress door.
Okay, gotcha, just making sure. Media would enter and exit through that.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So it's not, so
That's
it's,
what I think you were inferring.
So would
Yes,
the,
sir.
would the seating there on that left wall be probably media seating then?
No, that would be staff.
Oh, that would be
A
just
briefing
restricted
staff,
staff.
that would be a big TV or screen behind them so the audience could see, and there'd be 2 TVs on each of the 2 ends that you'd see there. I think everybody would be able to have good visibility.
so Ms. Henley, you could see, excuse me, Council Lady Henley, you could see from this screen or from this screen, depending on your needs and where you're sitting at the table.
Speaker's gonna run back and forth.
The speaker would have a control here at the podium, so they can highlight with a mouse what they're referring to.
And they'd be able to enter, staff would swap out here and go to the podium here and exit out the side and be able to control it. And we thought having tiered here, you can imagine if that was the staff here and you'd have the tier back there. And they could come and go without a lot of disruption to observe the informal.
John?
I'm just thinking aloud, it's having the city clerk kind of put right in there with the media kind of above that area is maybe not a great spot. I think about maybe cutting out a spot over in that front rail on the other side. No, on the other side. On the other side. No, right there.
Okay?
And put, I'd look to a city clerk to actually have it, but I know how cramped it gets over just in this general area when you've got a reporter, a cameraman, and all their equipment. And then if you got them just hovering around, it's probably difficult for the city clerk to be able to hear and concentrate on the,
Because 3 cameras typically means 6 people.
yeah.
Or even just flipping the desk so that it wasn't
Yeah, I just
So it faces the other way.
I just put it over on the other side, and then that's got a good visibility of everything else.
So we put her here and we slide them over to the side here,
No, I'm
maybe?
thinking you just put it over
Up
on the
here,
front.
this is
Yeah,
a
yeah.
access way.
No, take out that front tier. Yeah,
This
there you
one?
go. Yeah, right there.
Put her in here.
Reduce the number of seats. I don't
And-
think we ever had that many people wanting to be in.
Well, and
there
it's gonna be
anyway.
tiered, so I mean, you've got
Exactly.
a ton more.
Maybe we wedge it out here and she gets a corner.
Yeah,
Okay.
We can bring,
I think
we can bring some additional options. Josh, you wanna interject something?
Yeah, I would just wonder, Ms. Barnes, if, does the media interact with you on a regular basis when they enter and leave? Do they need to come to you for any documents or anything like that?
No, sir.
Okay.
Not in here.
If we locate you away from the media, I just would hate to have them moving back and forth across the space.
I think, Mr. Mayor, what we can do is look at different options for where we locate the clerk.
That suits me fine. My wife and I built a house about 4 years ago, just two of us. I can't imagine what's, and I found out only one should be doing it. And with 11 of us trying to design this thing, praise the
It's gonna be
Lord.
fun. I can assure you it's gonna be fun.
One did do it.
One did do it. I just stayed aside, I stepped aside.
Is there anything we're missing, Mr. Moss?
I
Councilman
don't know if
Moss.
you have, I don't have anything to add to this, because that is, a lot of meetings I go to are like, set up like that room, so I'm familiar with it. But do you have where, you could, maybe not now, but later,
happening now,
show
right?
how this insets and what's on all the dimensions, where the hallway, how this sits in the building, you know, relative to the building? I just see the space, but it would nice to to see where the hallway is. I just see the spot. It's like playing a game, you know, you're watching this part, but over here on the side, you can see where you are in the game. When I
Right.
see this, I'd like to know where in the building and, you know, where's the hallway, what are the tangent spaces, so you have a perspective.
That is
That's
the-
part of looking at the setup, is that spatial, relationship to the rest of the building.
So that's the next meeting.
Thank you.
I have a question about, in terms of, since it'll be more gallery seating, what is is there plans to have like inset speakers in there? I know some of the feedback I get a lot of is people can't hear what's going on. I don't think that's so much a problem in this room, but out there it's definitely, I mean, I get people who come up to me after meetings and say I couldn't hear anything that was going on. So the further back people get, it might be wise to have some kind of inset speakers, or, I don't know, that's just,
Twice as big as this room.
We will.
yeah.
We
It's
will.
a lot bigger.
Any other feedback on this space? Okay.
Like the kitchen.
Green light then on the square
Let's
footage?
move on
Okay.
while we got it.
And here's a configuration we've done elsewhere. Obviously, this doesn't have tiered seating, but I think you get the general idea of how these spaces would be configured. So that moves us to the council chamber. In the council chamber, we have sized at 4,800 square feet, fixed seating, audio, video recording, monitors, projection screens, podium, vote board, timers, telescoping podium for ADA access. That's something that moves up and down. So if you're in a wheelchair or if you're standing, can be at the right height. The current chamber seats 144. We're looking at seating 300. And the existing chambers is approximately 2,400 square feet, so we're basically doubling it. For comparison, the City of Chesapeake's chamber seats 235. I was there this morning. So we were looking at basically this configuration. Now, you may ask, well, what's this area in the rear? Why is that larger than it maybe needs to be? The reason is, if we go to individual seats, we're gonna need that space, okay? So if we go to individual fixed seats that maybe are upholstered with arms, that will accommodate 300 seats at that size. We were also thinking perhaps media could be back there, or we could have a space for media up near the front. Obviously, we have 11 seats for you, plus seats for city manager, deputy city manager, city attorney, up at the front of the dais. There would be a raised dais, 2 steps on one side, a ramp on the other, podium in the middle, and we'll notch out areas for the ADA seating. We're not showing that quite yet because we haven't quite got the configuration nailed down as far as, are we individual fixed seats or are we bench seats?
The line in the front row,
Oh, this is like a spectator rail?
like a courtroom rail.
Correct, yes.
Okay, Rosemary, then John.
First of all, please don't put bench seating in.
Okay.
I had to go to these meetings in Southampton County this past year, and they had benches, and they were hard. Especially when you're sitting there for a long time, they were really miserable.
John, I
So
think your comments were right about that.
please don't put in bench seats.
All right, so we want individual upholstered seats with arms.
Yes.
And,
Okay.
and the other thing, what about staff that's, besides the manager and planning staff and all,
Would the desire to have them at the dais, or would the desire to be maybe a row in front of the, what I'll call the spectator rail, a row in front of the spectator rail?
I think they need special seating somewhere.
Okay.
What we have today is pretty good, I think.
Yeah, well,
Table, I mean, they have this little
Right.
desk out there now.
right, yeah, they need, I think they need a table or
Okay.
their papers.
Table on the floor, or table as part of the dais?
I would ask them what they would want.
They need something to put papers on, that type of thing, you know.
And they need electrical hookup, and they need to be able to put a microphone in there, they need to have video control. So I would say they need a fixed, element in front of the banister, in front of the rail.
Like we have today, so.
Okay, so the current configuration works for that?
I don't know, you have to ask them.
Okay.
What would meet their needs the best, rather than us trying to say what meets their needs.
Okay.
John?
Since we're just dealing with square footage issues, but I've sent other comments, but it'll be for a later date. But I do think we need to have an outline, just like on the other place, where the media would be with the individual seats. That's so for people who are doing the public safety of the room know where they need to be, they know where they need to be. I think that would be important. And somewhere in the back, I think there needs, and I mentioned before, I think there needs to be some kind of table for the, I'll call it the print and virtual media who type on laptops while the meeting's going on, and that's an individual seat. That's not a very ergonomic activity, or it isn't in here either so much, but that would certainly, we need a big space, but I think, 4 people, probably, I never see more than that here, but 4 to 6 someplace in the back where they could have power. And I do believe in today's environment, looking forward, and with my good IT friend here to my left, is all these seats need to have some kind of USB plug, and they need to have the ability to allow people to plug in their devices while they're in the room. And just airlines can do it in individual seats, I know that we can too.
Jim Wood?
Yeah, and that would kind of go back to the conference table. I'm assuming it would be a powered table because that's, now you have to use a battery or something.
Your table in the 234?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it will.
Other comments on this before we move on? Okay, let's move on.
So here are some possible configurations we've done elsewhere. Individual seats, bench seats, video screens. Let's move on to the mayor's office. The mayor's office currently is about 325 square feet. We propose 300 square feet. This is but one furniture configuration that could be utilized in this space. Once again, we're just here to confirm the space quantity, okay? Not the space qualities. We'll be back to talk about that later. So if you don't like the style of furniture that you see here, let's not focus on that, okay? Let's focus on, is it large enough to accommodate the functions that are to be held in it?
Take
So
away
it's
from,
smaller than what you have now.
I'm fine.
Well, but you have meetings and all.
yeah, and, is this a takeaway that there's no windows in this space? Is that the conclusion I
Hey, no
should draw?
windows, come on.
There is no conclusion to be drawn along those lines,
Okay,
Councilman
I'm
Moss.
asking, because that's the I'm just asking.
Because we
that's
don't
how
know
it's
where in the
represented.
building this will go. I will also add that the office spaces that you see and the square footages are in line with city standards. The city has space standards for every size of office, size of workstation, conference rooms, things of that nature. And this is in adherence with that.
The only thing I would bring to one's attention, whoever's the mayor at the time with his office is there, sometimes having a larger table is much more functional, because quite often you have more than 2 or 3 people that come in and meet. We recently brought in that round table there. We squeezed 5 chairs in it. I think if we had a longer table,
Okay.
maybe with up to 8, chairs around it, I think he would serve the mayor and the people visiting the mayor's office very well.
But to that point, you probably need more square feet to
I think
accommodate
this
that larger
office is
table.
too small. I know you hardly hear
Smaller
me
than what
say
you
that,
have
but I
now.
think the office is too small.
I gotta agree with you, John. I think it is too.
I just know from my own experience that is too small.
Okay, so we need an office to accommodate a conference table
400
for
square
8.
feet. That'd be about 400, it'd be
Yeah.
75 square feet, make a big
Should it have a
difference.
sofa? I mean, don't,
As well as a U-shaped desk, workstation credenza.
No, I'd leave that to whoever's doing that mess, but that's too much, that's not enough space.
I might say that since you brought the small coffee table in, we're utilizing that. We're not going to the couch anymore. We're elbows on the table and
The table's much more functional.
yes, this isn't necessarily the furniture.
We need to have space there, so I'd say 400 is about right, that's what I think is good. It's too
So
small.
pop that up to 400.
Okay,
Blame me.
all right.
Couches.
No couches, and once again,
I'll just-
you know, this
We'll say
is
John
not the
Ross will spend more
furniture
money.
that we're gonna put in
that
this
doesn't happen
room.
every day.
But I just know what reality is.
Just a
Well, that
it's
is too
just a
small.
representation of what the room will accommodate. So we've determined that this configuration is a little too small, we need a conference room table for 8. So we will upsize the room to 400 square feet to accommodate that. All right. So moving to the city council member, private office, we said 90 square feet for that.
Same.
I'm sorry, vice mayor, 300 square feet, which is the same square footage we started with for the mayor.
I think
Does
that's
this-
fine. This office is gonna be used by council members and what, it really just is a function, in my view, of where we need more office space for council members to meet here at City Hall. So, we come down here and we all try to crowd into that little room over there in the corner and, or find a space somewhere.
And I think that, and I don't know, this is just me, and I know we're not, well, I'll wait till we get to those first. I don't know that we need 9 individual offices.
Probably don't need all that bookshelves and credenza, but a bigger table would probably be better.
I think a nice round table would do it, really, you know. But,
Yeah.
like the mayor
So-
described it.
So, the furnishing is not necessarily where we're headed, but the square footage. Do we want an office that has a workstation and a conference table within it? Because we do have, jumping ahead, we're gonna have 9 individual offices, one for every council member besides the mayor and vice mayor. Then we're gonna have 2 conference rooms, okay? Once again, these are just for city council. Those 2 conference rooms will each be able to accommodate 6 people around an oval or rectangular table. So that would be somewhere you could go to have a meeting with up to 6.
I would suggest that we haven't got, that we don't need 9 individual offices. That's my first thought. I might not be shared by other people. I think the bigger multi-function pieces, all these rooms, including the mayor's office, need a screen. No one should be in an office that's of that size that doesn't have a video display screen. That's
Right.
just a purpose. But I think what the vice mayor is suggesting makes sense. And I think, well, we might need, when people come down here, want to do a little bit of work, you know, now I guess in the future, 50 years from now, there could be a full-time council. I guess you're trying to plan for that, and if that's the thought that that might happen sometime in the future. But in our current CONOPS arrangement, I defer to my other peers. I don't know that we each need an individual spot down here, but maybe I'm wrong. I'll yield to the majority, but I certainly would not.
Being futuristic, and I'm not saying this is where we're gonna go either, just like you, but there are councils and boards that have staff. You know, Fairfax,
I'm with
Every
you, Rosemary.
council.
I'll put my stamp on it, yes.
council
9
member has a
offices.
staff, and I'm not saying that's where we're going, but let's say 25 years from
That's true.
now,
Good point.
it may be needed, you know, we may, that council, because I'm sure I'm not gonna be here then, but, you know, they may want staff members.
I'm with you.
So
All right.
the individual rooms might be more for staff than the actual council members.
That's true. I concede.
Okay?
I mean, I'll offer up that it frustrates me a little bit to watch you all have to come to this meeting every week, and you gotta bring your coats in and your books and and I just thought if y'all had a space that was yours, you could leave your briefcase there, your bag there, your
That's
coat
true.
there, and just bring the papers you need into the meeting, and, you know, especially if you come early and you're hauling all this stuff around the hallways, I just feel bad, so That was part of the reason why, well, that's why the 9 offices came up, was so that you'd have a space.
At
Give me
least a
them,
file
Barbara.
cabinet somewhere.
Somebody's finally got sympathy for us.
But I mean,
He's probably the
but
only
the thing
one.
is when we come in here,
Took asbestos to do it.
like today, if I came in at noon to do something to volunteer, then I had something at 1, and then I had between 1:30 and 2:30, so I sat in here, or I sat out there, and so that's the thing, it brought all my stuff back and forth, and there was really no place to do anything, so. I mean, I think it makes sense. The other issue, John, frankly, is, and when we talked to them about this, is I was worried a lot about the open meeting stuff and FOIA and all that, because originally the concept was a giant open bullpen. Well, the issue with that is that we're all sitting around, even with the best intentions, there's gonna be more than 3 of us sitting there talking, and that's not good, so.
No, you're right, that's not good.
So,
Thank you, sir.
looking out for
So the consensus,
I'm all in.
if I've listened and heard correctly,
Stay with the plan.
keep the 9 offices.
Yep.
And the 90 square feet is appropriate for the 9 offices. Can I get consensus on the vice mayor's office?
I think that's fine.
This look good?
Yeah.
Okay, and once again, we will revisit the furniture at a later date. So-
And I don't, getting back to the offices, you know, you wanna make them, I don't know if 90 square feet is big enough to be able to meet people in there, but I mean, you need to be able to put in, you know, not a huge folks, but I mean, like 3 people you need to be able to actually have in your office to talk to.
Well, Councilman, yeah, the discussion we had with Mr. Wood and Vice Mayor Jones at the time was, if you've got one, you meet with them in your office. If you have more than one, then you go to the conference room down the hall. And
I mean,
then,
most of my meetings are 2 or 3 people and, you know, so.
Or you go to the vice mayor's office.
Yeah, so
You
you
know,
got those two.
you know.
Really
right,
impressive.
that's what's on then.
Can you back up?
So, yes, sir.
So we could get 2 chairs in here, so you'd have 3 chairs.
Okay.
All right, good.
Minimal furniture, you don't need that much furniture.
So then we've got 2 conference rooms, and they would each be set up as a conference room. The way we've got it set up right now is 2 doors, maybe one front of house, one back of house.
Excuse me.
So the public could enter from the lobby side, from the public side of the suite, and you could enter from the rear. Not necessary that that's the way it be set up, but that's the way it's shown on this diagram, in case you're wondering why there's 2 doors. We can maybe have a small refrigerator, you know, used primarily on Tuesdays when you have your meetings. Does this meet your need? Okay. Have 2 of
Looking
those.
good.
Okay. All right, and that brings us to the council staff, which City Manager Hanson was discussing earlier. Currently, you've got 1 FTE right now, my understanding, is that right? Shared by 2 staff. So what we're proposing, that in the future, there is the potential to have 2 people there simultaneously, sharing 1 office with 2 workstations in that office. Okay?
Yeah.
Move ahead. All right, now let's focus on the city manager's function. So we've got a city manager office of approximately 300 square feet, 4 deputy city manager offices of approximately 250 square feet, an executive assistant to the city manager, 150 square feet, an assistant, 2 assistants to the city manager at 150, 3 deputy city manager executive assistants, they're in workstations, there's 5 of them. An executive receptionist of a 100-square-foot workstation, they would be sitting in the reception area. And we haven't yet determined whether there's glass between them and the waiting area or not, but that's the decision we'll make with you together in the future. And then 2 shared workstations. So let's look at what those look like. So the city manager's office, once again, proposed to be,
Small.
Make it bigger, say
Okay.
match the mayor, it's too small, that'll be the same, it's too small.
same size as the mayor out here. 400 square feet is where we want to go, for the same reason, to get a 8-person conference room table within the office.
That's up to the city manager to decide how he wants to
design
do
it,
that.
Just needs more space.
He has a lot of meetings in his office, the one I gather.
Mr. Manager?
I'll take the 400.
Okay.
We're looking out for you.
Although most of my meetings are filled up in here pretty good.
Anyway,
Yes, sir.
it's so well,
Okay.
it's
Any
well
other
designed.
discussion? City manager. All right, moving ahead to deputy city manager. So currently, their offices are about 160 square feet, but we're proposing a little larger, so we can get a conference room table in there. If we don't have the conference room table, we obviously could reduce it down to about 150 what it is now. But you can't get a conference room table in a 150 square foot office.
Space.
I think that's good for them.
There'd
Be
be
nice to get more, but
Four
I
of
think they'll
these.
be fine.
That is a lot of space.
Oh, they have to go find other places for their,
I'm just saying in today's world, it's a lot of space. It's, I'll say it's okay space, but more than that would be way over, but that's a lot of space by today's standards.
Okay, any more discussion?
Let's move on if everyone's okay. All right.
Okay. Executive assistant to the city manager. They're currently at about 160. We're proposing 150, and you can get a U-shaped workstation or an L-shaped workstation. Once again, don't focus on the furniture here. Focus on the function. So the thought is you'd have a desk with a side credenza and a rear credenza, and then 2 guest chairs and a bookshelf or a file cabinet.
Likes me.
And that's about it in 150 square feet. Look okay? All right. Assistant to the city manager, the same thing.
Okay, I'm gonna back up. I'm gonna talk about that for 1 second.
All right, the executive
Sometimes
assistant or the
She has
assistant.
people come in to meet with her to work through some issues, you know, and it can get kind of crowded in that office now from what I've seen. Am I not right, Dave?
yes, sir. We envision having a central entrance area and and a waiting area and an ability to provide an opportunity for them in a lobby config. I think that's what you were referring to.
Well, I know that sometimes she takes people that have come in here with a complaint, or a group of people that have come in with a complaint and takes them to her office. I know I've seen that numerous times. If this is sufficient, fine.
Right, we probably don't like her to have more than 2 people in there when we got the complaining situation. We try to get into a different environment at that point.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So moving on to the deputy city manager, executive assistants. These folks would be in workstations of approximately 80 square feet. There'd be 5 of them. And they'd be generally configured, as you see here in the bottom right-hand corner, in pairs. And the thought would be they would all be housed together, maybe across the hall from the deputy city manager's offices. Any discussion on this, or does this look adequate?
It does, but when you come back, I hope that's the appropriate time where we're gonna be able to look at, maybe it's in a different closed session, but we need to look at this in the context of the security of the space. And I don't know when that's gonna happen, but whenever, I don't wanna look like we put the final imprint till we've had, in the appropriate forum, had that discussion, and to make sure that all these things, when you look at that, still make sense. I'm just reserving, I wanna understand that.
Okay.
Rosemary?
Are you gonna be talking to these people and asking them if this is gonna be good enough?
We have talked with these people and kind of gotten the, yes, this is good enough, but this is your decision, this is your department, you oversee
I
it.
understand that, but we're not the ones who work in there, and it's, I really wanna make sure that
Okay.
I mean, I don't sit in there, so they do, and they can tell us more than we can if that's gonna be adequate.
And it's in line with the space standards of the city.
So Tony, would that be reflecting 160 square feet?
For 2 workstations, yes.
Okay.
Right. Correct.
Right.
So you have 2 workstations in that 160 square feet.
Still close.
I can show you some spaces.
And to your question, Councilman Moss, the thought in the new building would be no public could enter into the suite without authorization. As in your current layout, someone can walk into 234 without asking a single question. That would not occur in the new city hall. The public would approach a receptionist, the receptionist would let them back into the secured portion of the suite. So any of these office spaces we're talking about today would all be, secured. So moving forward to the executive receptionist, once again, this person would be in the open office reception area. Haven't determined yet if they're sitting in direct proximity to the visitor waiting area, i.e. can reach out and touch them, or is sitting behind closed wall with glass. But that is the decision that will need to be made in the near future. on how that is configured, okay?
I know I don't like that.
So 100 square feet, a little larger because they're dealing with a lot of things on the front of the house. This okay? Then we've got some shared workstations. Two at 64 square feet. This is for staff who come in, maybe waiting to meet with the city manager or city council, mayor. And they may be tied up, city manager, council, or mayor, and it gives them a place to work while they're waiting. So there is not downtime. Right now, they may sit in the visitor waiting area. This gives them an actual workstation to sit down and start working in. They may be waiting or preparing for a city council meeting, for a work session, things of that nature. But it gives them identifiable space within the city council, city manager suite that they have to work. So there's two workstations of 64 square feet.
Okay?
Good? All right, then we've got the support space. So the support space is the space that obviously doesn't have a person sitting in it full-time. The visitor waiting area, we've got a council chambers waiting area that would seat 40, that would be directly outside of your large city council chamber. The AV recording broadcast room, similar to what you have now of 150 square feet. The staff restrooms, two of those at 50 square feet each, they would be back of house, okay? So this would not be shared by the public. This would just be for staff, city council, city manager, mayor. A coffee niche of 60 square feet. This is in addition to the kitchenette, which is going to be adjoining your large room 234 meeting room. Then we've got file supplies workroom of approximately 225 square feet. A copier, files, wall units, a microfiche reader, and then a break room and a coat closet. Now, as far as how this space is configured, you know, the copier, the wall units, and the microfiche reader could all be housed together in one small workroom, or it could be part of that open office area where you see the DCM executive assistants housed in. So we haven't made those decisions quite yet, but we will be making them as we move the project forward on what functions better for them and allows them to be more productive and more efficient to serve the citizens of the city. Are there any questions about any of this?
That council chambers waiting area, do you have a pictorial of that? Is that right outside the doors like we have today? And there would be seating out there for 40 people? Am I imagining that correctly?
That is correct. And it would also serve as overflow.
I understand.
So on the nights that there are a large public hearing on a very contentious issue, you'd be able to open doors and allow that to be overflow seating.
Sure could use that tonight.
I'm sorry to hear that,
I
Mayor.
understand what it is.
But you could actually put screens out there and people could see.
Yes,
what was
well,
going on inside.
we would put screens out there so people could see without actually being in the chambers on a every night basis. But on nights where there is overflow, you could actually open doors and they would be part of the proceeding. Does that make sense?
It's a good idea.
Very good.
So any discussion on this, or this all look good? Okay,
One last question.
yes, sir.
With the people that have opened the cubicle space or whatever, where there'll be a, and I know you said you had a coat closet,
Yes, sir.
but I'm referring to people who bring like workout gear and that kind of thing where it doesn't, because I know some of my folks, we end up having to do something for that because moving around their chair, it always seemed like with their trash can, everything else, put down their gym bag, they get jammed in there and it's hard to move around in. So we ended up doing something for that, made a rack for it. And I'm just curious for people who do that, is that coat closet or something like it gonna be a place where people can store that
You
stuff when
just
they
hit
work
the
in those
nail on
smaller
something
spaces?
else too. Are you gonna have showers in these restrooms?
We had, on these private restrooms, we had not said that we
I
would.
would really strongly consider that being done. I even have Mr. Moss shaking his head, you know,
Okay.
for more reasons than just people working out, you know.
Okay.
The hours people put in here, go to meetings, and then sometimes for emergency situations, granted, we're usually the DOC, but I have come over here too.
But it is something that we do in our spaces today, just because.
And the cost of doing it is minimal with
It
what
is.
you're doing.
It is. So,
we
Councilman
do
Moss,
have-
to your question, that we have not determined exactly what the configuration of these workstations would be. And as you can see here, we had 2 wardrobes, 1 for each workstation.
Just a
that people
point to
can
take
put their
into
gym bag
consideration.
or hang a large coat in the event of inclement weather.
Just a quality of life thing I've experienced with my own folks who work in cubicle spaces, and so just sharing it.
Tom?
Thanks.
It's not as tight as some
Or
people's
ask
type.
if they're going to the bar with.
So, when we talked briefly last week, Ms. Henley, you raised the interest in the Office of the Treasurer and Office of the Commissioner of the Revenue being here. An invitation was extended to both those offices, and we came prepared to, the treasurer is down here.
And then I might add, Ms. Henley, the treasurer asked me to say he apologized for not giving you a quick text yesterday or a call yesterday. He got overcome by events. But he said he's, along with Mr. Kellum, who left you a voicemail, said they're good with their space.
Now, if the mayors went up to 400 feet, are they still gonna be happy with 300?
No, they don't have near the representation issues that he
Okay,
has.
That's an easy
Just so
change
we
to make, though.
Just so they are satisfied with what they.
Right, so we met with their staffs 2 times, and then we just validated the program with
Probably
both of
bigger
them
than what
within
they
the
have
last month.
now.
It's bigger than what they have now.
Because there's 91 of them and there's only 11 of you, there are a bunch of slides here that go into the detail in every person. I don't think that's what you wanted to see. But if there was a particular concern.
Tom, you
I
read
can-
me like a book.
Right.
Take a sail and go.
And I know that Mr. Kellum did express a desire for another 100 square feet back in a space that had been removed, and that's easily, accomplishable. But, if there wasn't any particular concern with Treasurer Commissioner of the Revenue space versus council space, we don't need to go through all that.
Very good.
Then that brings us to a close.
Tom, thank you for your presentation.
Certainly, sir.
Appreciate it, Barry. Thank you all for coming over and giving us some help. Okay, we're going to the city manager's briefing.
Yes, sir.
Let's get on with it.
So we're moving expeditiously along, and so Phil Pullen's gonna be coming through the door, and getting teed up in here. Tom, you pulling Phil's up? No, he's Rhodes. We're gonna jump right out at Rhodes.
Most important.
And for those of you that don't know, Phil Pullen is now the acting city engineer with John Fowler's retirement and is serving that function. And Mark Johnson is the acting director of Public Works. And so with that as a lead-in,
Well, Phil, we're glad to have you as usual. You go through these things very well.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. Good to be here this afternoon, and council members, Vice Mayor. I am going to present the proposed FY19 Roadway CIP, and I will give you an overview of the program, talk about some of our accomplishments, talk about the Smart Scale VDOT program, talk about some requested above, not funded projects, and above target projects. Believe me, it'll be brief though. All right, the proposed program, as shown here, we have 57 projects in the proposed CIP. That's 47 individual projects, 10 programs. We have 4 new projects we're going to introduce, and the funding is as follows on the chart: $290 million broken down into those categories. The total project cost of all projects is $1.5 billion, and we are happy to present that we are able to continue to fully fund the previously fully funded projects in the CIP. Here's the pie chart that we always show, broken down our program in the 5 major categories, and the significant thing about this is showing that the majority of our program is covering congestion projects, 52% of the funding going towards congestion. The 4 new projects we're introducing is Elbow Road Phase 2D, Dam Neck Holland intersection, the General Booth Boulevard Camp Pendleton entrance project, and traffic signal retiming. The Elbow Road Extended Phase 2D project is the 3rd and final phase of Elbow Road. It will provide the final 2 lanes of Elbow from Salem to the amphitheater. We're introducing this as a new project because we were fortunate enough to receive $10 million of federal funding recently. Doesn't come till 23 and 24, but we established the project, get it going, and it still has a BTC, which is balanced to complete, of 17 million. The Dam Neck Holland Road project is another project that we are introducing. This will add a turn lane and provide intersection improvements there at that intersection. It's a $2 million project. Again, we received some federal money on this. Doesn't come in until 23, 24, but we established the project. General Booth Camp Pendleton intersection project. This one will provide a new entrance into Camp Pendleton with a signal. And the good thing for the city, it'll provide overflow parking for the Owls Creek boat ramp that is occasionally overloaded, so they'll be able to cross General Booth and park onto the Camp Pendleton's property where we will build a parking lot. Funding is allocated for design only, but the camp is putting in a grant for federal money, so hopefully they can get that grant and secure the full funding for that project. The last one is the Traffic Signal Retiming 2 project. This one, again, we got some federal money, about $1 million, and we're funding 2 projects, 14 major intersections along Indian River Road. And the second one is corridor signal retimings along Kempsville, Witch Duck, and Newtown. This chart here shows a summary of the 28 major projects in the program. And you have them there for your reference. But what's significant here is 22 of these are fully funded in the program. Only those 6 shown in red are not fully funded. So I think that is a good thing. And also in the program are 7 major programs that we do individual projects. And these next charts, I will talk about these for a minute. Major bridge rehab, we fund inspections and rehab to culverts, bridges, and overpasses, funded at about $1.7 million a year. Street reconstruction, as the name says, we fund reconstruction of streets and intersections, about $2 million a year. Traffic safety improvements, this funds a plethora of things, including turn lanes, signals, sidewalks, funded at about $2.4 million a year. And lastly, traffic signal rehab phase 2, $150,000 a year, but we replace signal heads and other components of traffic signals.
Well, excuse me.
Oh yeah, any questions? I'm sorry, please stop me.
Yeah, you had rural road improvements as one of the components, but I don't see you covered that.
Yes, ma'am, you are exactly right, Mrs. Henley. It is right there. Rural road improvements is one of our programs. I just didn't have a chart for it.
Well, that's why I wanted to know.
I'm sorry. But, good news though, we are funding that at what, Katie?
$200,000 a year?
Yeah, so we have,
Same thing, we funded it in 1990. You know, we haven't gone up a bit.
we are gonna put some projects to that funding.
Okay.
So in addition to the regular congestion and
Start taking notes
safety.
for reconciliation, Mrs. Henley.
She's going to hear a lot about projects in the Princess Anne District.
I know Princess Anne District, but.
Well, let's not
Indian
get greedy,
River Road,
Mrs.
we
Henley.
got-
In addition to the safety and congestion projects, a lot of the key economic projects or roadway projects we do for economic development support end up in the roadway program. Here are 3 examples. The Atlantic Avenue reconfiguration, this will provide a cul-de-sac of Atlantic Avenue at Pacific, new signals along Pacific. This one is in support of the Cavalier development. Nimmo Parkway Phase 2A, this provides a 2-lane extension of Nimmo Parkway over here at West Neck to serve as an entrance road to the Veterans Care Center. And lastly, Cleveland Street Phase 4, we got smart scale funding for that. That provides 4 lanes from Witch Duck to Independence, and that is in support of the Pembroke SGA. So 2 new projects added into the program this year.
Before you hit
Yes,
that, go back.
yes, sir.
I just want to make my note is, just for my own thing, I don't see that as economic development on Atlantic Avenue reconfiguration. The council didn't vote to provide money for that, and I am not supporting that again for money.
We're not adding any money. We are only using that design money that we were given, and it is still the responsibility of the developer to secure state funding to fully fund it.
I just want to make sure that no one.
I got you. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
2 new projects we're adding into the program this year. Sandbridge Road, Nimmo Parkway, 2 new projects that are fully funded in the CIP that were previously in the program, but we're not fully funded. Sandbridge and Nemo 7A, Mrs. Henley, as I mentioned to you in several briefings we've had, we were able to fund that 13 million balance to complete, and now it is fully funded. It is not scheduled to go to construction. Well, I'll get to that in the next card. And Shore Drive Phase 4, this is on the west side of Lesnar Bridge. So Sandbridge and Nemo, we are fully funded this, not till construction start till July of '22. But we hope we've, as the chart says, we've applied for a Tiger grant. So hopefully if we get that, we can advance that date. But it's fully funded in the program.
Is that Tiger grant federal or is it state?
Federal.
That's the federal.
We've
There's no
su-
state funding that we can apply for? Because
We've applied for revenue share money on that. And we will hear about that shortly.
Should hear about that shortly, and that would be FY20 money.
the thing, and this may be out of your realm here, but I noticed two things in our Freedom of Information Act request that were requests for copies of layouts and so forth that seem to be questioning some property acquisitions for this property, this project.
You know, I didn't see that, Ms. Henley, but my staff gets those routinely, and I think a lot of them aren't really, controversial. I think there's firms out there that just want to see what we're requiring, and, Mr. Waldo and his firm is.
With the right-of-way, so I didn't know if that was something that was gonna hold it up.
Dave, do you know of anything specific?
No, it's exactly what you said.
Yeah.
We get this periodic request, but nothing specific.
There's very little right-of-way on this project,
Well, that's
so.
what I thought, that's why, I just would hate to see something come in like
Yep.
that and hold us up at this point.
Fortunately, this one we have most of the right-of-way. The next one, Shore Drive Phase 4.
I just want, since
Oh, yes,
this is
sir.
our only chance with a lot of stuff here, I will assume that we'll be leveraging the full extent of this pavement and the other aspects to increase our ability to drain and move water
It's interesting.
over and above what the road itself creates.
Mr. Moss, this project right here is, we're addressing sea level rise and recurrent flooding on all our projects.
I just
But
want-
this particular one, we are raising it to the max, 3 feet above the 100-year flood to address sea level rise, as you would expect going into the barrier
I
island.
understand the road's being raised. I was referring to the ability to move water coming from other places because the road provides an opportunity to itself, with the drain pipes and whatnot, to the capacity that moves water from other places, and you use that as a
Catch it.
vehicle.
Yes, sir.
That's
We-
what I was referring to.
we-
But I'm sure you're looking at that. I want the public to know, as we're building new stuff, we have learned from our past, and we're leveraging the marginal cost of adding capacity.
Leveraging
Sir.
the modeling that we're doing to
Right,
have
okay.
those volumes and calculating 100-year storms and sea level rise.
I appreciate that very
The
much.
rain data. Shore Drive 4, this project's been around, but it hadn't been funded. Now we are fully funding it in this CIP. It provides safety improvements to Shore Drive west of Lesnar from Stratford to Marlin Bay. Incidentally, we're going to go ahead, since this is not scheduled to start construction until '23, we're going to pave, resurface Shore Drive, that same limits from Marlin Bay to Stratford later this fall, as a result of a lot of inquiries and questions we've had.
Western Bridge construction.
In the Lesnar Bridge construction. All right, some of our accomplishments we've made over this year. A couple of major sidewalks we've completed. They seem small, but they're pretty significant. Buckner Shared Use Path and Greenwell Sidewalk, both we did with competitively obtained funds, which we're getting good at securing. Cleveland Street Phase 1B, this included improvements along Cleveland Street there at the Vicom parking lot. Small project, but significant because it helps set the condition for the Greenwich flyover coming in, which is under construction and is imminent. Silverleaf and South Independence. We also completed that project, which was a high accident location identified project that has significantly improved safety in that corridor. Projects that are currently under construction are these right here, and I will speak about these quickly. The bus stop infrastructure, we're continuously building those. 8 of 15 completed. The goal, Brian Solis, is 100 by FY23, I believe.
What's the status on the one in front of the hospital, Brian?
Just get permission to get the right away from the hospital. They're dedicating it to us, and all the plats are done. Just need the permission in the CIP to accept it.
Thank you very much. Didn't mean to interrupt.
Shelter's
Sorry to slow
waiting
y'all down.
to be put in.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
The next one that's under construction is Cleveland Street Phase 2, basically across the street from the Vicom parking lot. We're straightening that that curve right there, and putting in a new signal, again, to set the conditions for the Greenwich flyover coming through. Construction is scheduled this month. Holland Road Phase 6, everybody knows that's under construction. We're reporting, VDOT is reporting next month, construction will be complete. Lesnar Bridge, this is our signature project here. It has been delayed for a variety of reasons, but we're reporting that both bridges will be open in July and the final completion September, finishing up the landscaping and other miscellaneous activities. Witchduck Road Phase 2, approximately 30% complete, completion in 2020. Indian River Kempsville, we have just solicited bids on this. We got a good bidder. We are awaiting award later this month, and this intersection project will be under construction. This chart right here is the most important chart of my entire presentation. I just call attention to this. This says that in FY19, we have 21 projects going to construction around FY19 over the course of the year at a value of $194 million. Now, this includes some major maintenance projects and some smaller pedestrian projects, but mostly this is major highway expansion projects. So this is, heading into a construction time. You're going to see a lot of barrels out there.
Bill, I think, okay, that doesn't mean that's when the bulldozers get out there. That's when you put the bid out and so forth.
Well,
so
most of them are add dates, I believe. So construction's probably 3 months behind that date you see.
But reasonably close to that.
What's that? Reasonably, yes, ma'am. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of those. I'm not going through all those, but one of them that is a very important project is Alaskan Road Bridge and Alaskan Road Phase 1A, VDOT's last administered project in our city. It extends from Hilltop to just past the bridge. It widens Alaskan Road, removes the feeder lanes, and provides a new bridge over Linkhorn Bay, and construction will start later this fall. Rosemont Road Phase 5. Another key project. It provides 4 lanes from Lynn Haven to Dam Neck. Construction will start in January of 2019. And the third project, another one on that list to point out, is Centerville 2. Provides 4 lanes from Indian River to Kempsville. It will start in July of 2019. We're still going through acquisition. All right, so as you've heard me say many times before, we're in a climate where state and federal money transportation funding is scarce. It still is. But the good news is we have been successful in competing for and obtaining some state and federal money that is competitive. All the funding seems to be competitive these days. And I wanted to brief you on this VDOT program, Smart Scale. It began in 2016 and went to a 2-year program beginning in FY17. So in 2016, first round, we were very successful. We received $36 million for those 3 projects. Round 2, 2017, we were again successful. We received $30 million for those 3 projects. And right now we are in the process of developing candidate projects for FY18. We would, each year when we've been awarded this Smart Scale funding, we've had to allocate city funding as our commitment. So we would expect to, in 2018, if we get projects, when we get projects, we would again have to allocate above target money to meet our requirement. So a summary quick of what the Smart Scale is all about. This just shows you that it's all about congestion. That this is the state requirements, this is state criteria for the category A, which we are in, and you can see this is what they measure the projects by. Congestion is gets 45%. So when we develop candidate projects, we obviously gear them towards meeting this criteria.
I could one question. Well, I assume that in the upcoming budget request that will come forward, there'll be a category that will be called Smart Scale Match, where we're going to put a place marker of funding to match that, or when we actually get something, we then go and try to find the money out of our existing budget?
The second thing you said.
Okay, then my question would be, I guess we'll be identifying when we get the budget, we'll be able to know as policymakers what those projects are or where those areas are. We're going to go and get that funds in the event that that happens, so we know the choices that we're making.
I will let David Bradley or the manager, somebody answer that, because just from a schedule though, Mr. Moss, we will not submit the projects till August. So we will not find out till we get them until, what, Katie, January?
They'll evaluate, later this year, and then they'll probably be awarded in the springtime.
I guess would be helpful is historically looking back then, because obviously that was our practice then. Where did we go to find those dollars? And what did we unfund to fund that?
This team is probably the most sophisticated team in the business of obtaining, competitively obtained funds. They are extremely intense. They use our on-call consultants to help evaluate our project. If you go back
I congratulate, I'm just saying, once you
to
get
the
it,
list-
where does the money come from to
So
match it?
if you go to the list of projects that are red, meaning they're not fully funded and they have some dollars against them, that'll be a list of projects that we're working to try to fit additional funds associated with these projects into it. And in some instances, it won't be what you may believe in your district to be a top project, but it'll meet that pie chart and it'll compete to where we win. And so sometimes we'll be building projects that we really wish we could build other ones, but we're getting that extra money, that $30 million hit.
I'm all on board with that.
So the list that we would tell you to look to is just look at the list of what Phil put up there that showed some red ones that aren't fully funded, because those will be the ones that we don't have a funding plan for. If we win some money against large local dollars, we'll be able to move some dollars around like we do.
Don, you're okay? I just heard you say you're okay.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
now I know it's balanced
All
to
right.
complete projects, I got it.
Yes, sir.
Got it.
So this is just a strategy we had. We had a kickoff meeting internally. We have a transportation committee within the city made up of several key departments. We look at several candidate projects, match them against the criteria, and then as Dave said, we developed down to about 9 projects, and we have those being further analyzed by a consulting firm using modeling, and we will be able to report shortly what we recommend is probably the top 3 or 4 to submit as smart scale.
Just ask a quick question. In these criteria, who decides which one it fits? Because that one of safety only being 5% is really hard to explain to folks, but I guess who decides that it's a safety thing and not a congestion thing?
You mean who came up with these criteria, Ms. Henley, or?
When you're deciding which criteria you're going to select to apply for.
Oh, well, our traffic engineering group has a very good database on roadway hierarchy congestion projects in the city. Also, we have high accident location studies. So we have a lot of that data, most of that data. The Economic Development Group, we work with planning and Brian and SGA office. They provide a lot of that. Some of these
How do you
environmental
decide
land use.
That it fits congestion and not safety, because safety only is worth 5% and congestion is 45. I'm just saying it's an awful hard concept to try
It
to
is.
explain to the public, because I don't understand it exactly.
You can see what a hard job we have. So we do our best melding these criteria.
This is state criteria. We try to get inside their head, and when they have sessions, they have work sessions that we get invited to. I mean, this is a highly competitive environment.
But in all fairness to the state, there is never gonna be an easy
No.
way to allocate scarce resources, and I applaud them for
This is
what
one of
they've
the
done.
best things the state has ever done.
They've done, and I respect
I
the
agree.
approach with which they've
But
taken.
what that means, though, is then we wind up with some projects having to be locally funded.
Yes, ma'am.
So that's why it takes longer to get them built, even though it really would be one of our priorities.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking
Nemos-
Cambridge Road
That's why we
thing.
need a bond referendum for roads.
Bridge Road.
Because that doesn't fit congestion, but it's a safety issue, so it just,
Can't
it's
turn
gonna
down the
have to be
federal and
local.
state money.
Yeah.
I would love to submit that in MO 7A, but we can submit it, but it won't score well. It just won't.
I try to tell folks, and it's hard to explain.
So we have, let's see, I'm sorry, we do have requested but not funded projects, and, let's see, where's my chart on that? Here we go. We have 11 requested key projects that are not funded. You can see on this chart, the 8 above the red line, or as Mr. Hanson mentioned, those are projects in the CIP that just have a BTC, a balance to complete. The 3 below are other projects we've identified as key needs, but they're not in our program. I'll go through these real quick. The Indian River Princess Anne intersection, Ms. Henley is very familiar with this. This would provide congestion relief at the Pungo intersection. There is a $6.4 million balance to complete. However, as Mrs. Henley knows, start later this month, we're going to get out there and do an interim project to put in some turn lanes that we think will provide some great value.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Laskin Road Phase 1B. This project provides the third and final phase of Laskin 1, 6 lanes on Laskin from the bridge to Oriole. There's a balance to complete of $23 million. Laskin Road Phase 2. This is the project further east from Oriole to the 31st Street split. Balance to complete of $18 million. Laskin Road Phase 3. This is on the west end of Laskin Road, 8 lanes from Republic to I-264, $33 million balance to complete. Nimmo Parkway Phase 7B, Mrs. Henley, this is the one in your district there, the companion project to the 7A. This would take Sandbridge Road further, or Nimmo Parkway, I'm sorry, from McLannon's Curve, right there where it breaks off Sandbridge Bridge, new alignment to Lagomar. Now, we've applied for a grant on this one, too, another federal grant, infra. Oh, not this project. We did not apply for this one. I'm sorry. So this has a $29 million balance to complete. Princess Anne Road 7A. This is a safety improvement project from Seaboard to Sandbridge Road. $8.4 million balance to complete. Clearfield Avenue, again, with the work we're doing on Cleveland, this would provide, relieve a choke point, 4 lanes from Cleveland Street to Virginia Beach Boulevard. And this last project here, this is an interesting project. This is Pungo Ferry Road improvements. This project is resulting from a study we commissioned to look at raising road segments in the southern part of the city to combat recurrent flooding or to address flooding. This would amount to raising Pungo Ferry Road from Blackwater to the bridge where it's kind of got a sag in it, about 3 or 4 feet, $11.5 million. And the new bridge at Sandbridge Road intersection, again, this is another project that we identified through that study. This would raise the intersection to relieve flooding. Now, there's a box culvert with this project too, but that is going to be done with the Asheville Park project that Mr. Leahy briefed you on last week.
And those two, I would just briefly like to mention. Now, this one, Sandbridge and Indian River, I was just under the impression that this was being done with the Asheville Park stuff.
Sandbridge New Bridge?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
Just the box culvert is, Ms. Henley. We need to strategize some more on that because it does make sense probably to do all the improvements together. So, of course, this isn't funded, but if there's somehow that we could do that box culvert with this road raising, it does make sense.
The part for Asheville installs the box culvert and raises the road just a few inches to make up the difference that would be added to any flooding from pumping out or draining out from Asheville. But it doesn't solve the entire length. There's 3,000 feet on Sandbridge and 1,000 on Newbridge. That's the big project. So all this does is make up for the small incremental issue that the pump over from Asheville
But there will be some improvement with the Asheville.
It will clearly be better, but it won't, it's not this project.
Well, just also, just to briefly mention this Pungo Ferry Road improvement possibility of raising it. You know, last year, this whole southern flooding is just really getting to be more than it used to be. But last spring, we were really shut out of being able to exit the whole southern part of the city, except for Princess Anne Road. All of these other accesses, Pungo Ferry, West Neck, and Indian River were closed. It's the first time I ever remember that happening. And, you know, I think just from a very important safety situation, we really, you know, I appreciate y'all looking at this, but this will be something, you know, we need to revisit.
The previous city engineer, I will give him credit, as that was happening, he directed us to start this study, and we've identified 8, 9, 10 locations that when we looked at projects like this, we think this is one of the most important ones. But, so we're still kind of flushing through that. But yeah, I think we need to really take a look at so that doesn't happen, what you just described. So lastly, in addition to everything I've presented here today, we always have a healthy backlog. I'm not going through all these, but this represents about 60 projects that are the backlog at the tune of $1 billion, $1.5 billion. 1.8, nearly $2 billion. And with that, I will open up for discussion and any questions, please, or projects.
John Moss, please.
Just one observation, one I think this kind of validates, I know we're still working on that, why, if we want to address some of the issues that only local roads are never going to compete, the public's going to have to be a partner with us somehow in a bond referendum. I don't know how else we can raise any substantial capital to build roads without one. That's my personal observation. Still stand behind that. It won't be $1.8 billion, I can assure you that. But what I would like to know as a question, because I know you're working on that part, in the modeling that we have, and that we work with ODU to partner on, can we communicate to the public at the conclusion of the 6-year bid up that we have, and these projects are now all online, what is the arterial performance of the system of those areas before and after the improvements? You know, maybe it's just that it didn't get worse, and that's a good thing nowadays, but I think it would be good, because that's really the end, that's the value added of the project.
Yes, sir. We can absolutely.
I think that would be good to know. And is there a project that's not funded, and maybe the Vice Mayor or Jim Woods might know with the Development Authority, that would, if we did something, would change in a material way our ability to market any of our property that we have, or other people's property, that matter, that would help us in our economic recruitment of better paying jobs? Are there some roads that we aren't here for whatever reason, if we were wanting to gamble, because we don't have someone out there biting, but if we were trying to do something, would say, oh, this is a place you'd want to put your next $5 or your next $1 million. I know you might not be able to answer that today, but I would like to know if there is such a list. I'm sure other council members as well would like to know what they are.
Barbara?
Just one question. This one kind of came off my stack. I'm not sure where it was, but you didn't mention West Neck Road, Phase 4. Now that, maybe because it's cost participation, but anyway, if anybody's listening and they say, we didn't hear West Neck Road, that is a fully funded project that's going to get started.
Yes, ma'am. In the back of your briefs, we have the 50 projects. I just didn't want to go through every one of them, but, and I didn't pick and choose by priority, but yes, ma'am, that one particularly is fully funded. We're moving out expeditiously on that.
Any other questions of Phil? Phil, great presentation as usual. Thank you. Okay, we'll now go to the Coastal CIP Council Information Briefing.
And Mayor Dan Adams.
Dan, we're glad to have you, my friend.
And his boss, Phil Roars, is on the computer, so we're letting Dan stand up on the program.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. It's my pleasure to present an overview of the Coastal Capital Improvement Program for FY19 through 24. We have a total of 23 projects in the Coastal CIP program. Total CIP program, including appropriations to date, is $144 million. The 6-year allocation is $78 million. And the total allocation for the program for FY19 is just over $12 million, $12.7 million. 2018 is shaping up to be a banner year for the Coastal Division. We have several major projects in the queue: Chesapeake Beach restoration, Sandbridge restoration, Croatan Beach restoration, dredging of Lynn Haven Inlet to full depth, Rudy Inlet to full depth, and the largest neighborhood dredging SSD project to date with Chesapeake and Colony. So we'll detail those projects and a few more. This is our core coastal section division and why we do what we do. Beach replenishment provides storm damage protection. Navigation dredging keeps the main channels navigable, and our neighborhood dredging program restores navigation and helps to revitalize our neighborhoods. Just a quick down and dirty list of the 16 core coastal beach nourishment and navigation dredging projects. So we'll kick it off with the Chesapeake Beach restoration. This is a major restoration of Chesapeake Beach. It is out for bids now. We plan on going to construction this spring. It's going to place 350,000 cubic yards of material onto the beach just from the offshore shoal, just off of the first island of the Bay Bridge Tunnel. It's going to extend the shoreline out about 300 feet It's going to raise the beach up to an elevation of about 12 feet. Currently, it's about elevation 6, so that's quite an amount of volume of sand we're going to place there. And it's also going to have dune features along certain segments of the beach. Okay, Sandbridge Beach restoration. I have 2 slides on Sandbridge Beach. That's a good graphic from the past. Some people may have forgotten what a dire situation Sandbridge Beach was in before the program was initiated. This project will fund the next nourishment cycle that is planned for later this year. It was last nourished in 2013. The project was designed for a 3-year cycle as the resort beach was, but we've been able to place more than 3 years of advanced maintenance on these cycles, which gives us economy of scale, and we pay less over time and mobilization. This is a federal cost share project, but at the last 2 cycles, federal funding has not been appropriated for Sandbridge Beach restoration, so the SSD has paid, local funding has paid for the entire project, and that is going to be the case for the next cycle.
Mr. Seaman, if I could interject a second. I did not follow the bipartisan budget agreement that closely relative to this part of the Army Corps of Engineers budget, but I do know there was a significant plus up. Does anyone have any feel from the Army Corps of Engineers that any of those resources that were increased on that side, were they directed in this category or not? I didn't follow that in detail, but I know there was a top line increase, and overall on both sides of the equation, 176 billion, and the other side was 65. I just don't know how it was allocated relative to these types of projects.
Moss, they won't release their work plan for months, so we won't know how they're gonna split the money up.
But there is a
Congress
potential
did
that
give-
previously was not aware,
There's
right
some
now be.
potential.
All right.
And then the bulk of those funds have gone to areas impacted by Matthew and the storm events from the hurricanes from this season. A lot of it's going to the northeast and to the Florida coast.
If I just may, this is a federal cost participation, which the federal hasn't been there, so if we get any this year, that would be a great surprise. But this other slide that talks about the future, and we do have this other money that, to be able to fund an emergency if necessary, and so this is always kind of hard to explain to the folks that their money is all still there and so forth, especially if they see these blanks along the way. And that's the next slide.
Yes, the next slide. So this current project is going to fund the upcoming cycle. And another thing to note, Sandbridge Beach was nominated and selected. It was one of 3 beaches that's going to receive an award for America's Best Restored Beaches, and that'll be presented later this month at the American Shore and Beach Preservation Association Coastal Summit up in Washington, D.C. So the parent CIP to Sandbridge Beach Restoration 2 is Sandbridge Beach Restoration 3. So this will fund subsequent cycles after the 2018 event, okay? And then there's also funds available in the event we have a catastrophic hurricane and we have to do an emergency replenishment. There's also funds available for a 3rd project if need be.
Well, I keep reading all this stuff about how we're going to allow Sandbridge to absolutely fall apart, and that simply is not true. And there's also some suggestions from some folks that it sounds like they might be going to be punished because they're in a convenient SSD, and I certainly hope that doesn't happen. But Sandbridge Beach restoration is good and solid.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Croatan Beach restoration, we have a project planned for fall. It's still in the permitting phases for Croatan Beach. It's to provide a minimum recreational beach width of about 120 feet and to augment some dune erosion that's happened. We did a study on Croatan Beach in 2016. It's historically been stable because of the weir and jetty infrastructure, but because of the unusual wave climate over the last 3 to 4 years, we've noticed some narrowing of the beach and more frequent wave run-up and loss of material on the dunes. So this project will address those concerns. We're going to place up to 300,000 cubic yards of material on Croatan Beach via a truck haul. Beach replenishment 2, this is our resort beach project. Our condition surveys indicate the need for a project in 2019, so we've requested that the Corps initiate that process. And so we're looking forward to a nourishment project sometime in 2019 for the resort beach, or perhaps early 2020. Bay Beach's resiliency, this project was,
I ask that,
Yes, ma'am,
does
you
that
may.
money come from TIP or is it from general fund?
I believe, general fund. Now, that project, the federal government and the Army Corps did appropriate funds last cycle, so we're remaining hopeful that they
We got
they
Fed
do
money on
identify
this.
funds for that. Now, we will have, after our July 1 appropriation this year, in 2019, we will have enough money in the account to cover our 35% cost share. If the federal money does not materialize, we'll have to have some discussions on how to address that. But this CIP program's funding for our 35% cost share of the total project. Okay, Bay Beach's resiliency and restoration. This project was introduced into the CIP program last year. It's going to evaluate and address the need for a nourishment project at Ocean Park beaches and Cape Henry beaches. This is the last segment of our coastline that does not have a fully engineered beach. This will not only provide storm damage protection and a wider recreational beach, but it'll make the beach eligible for disaster relief funds should an event occur.
What did I read in the package? What, we're going to be able to take it from out of the bay, not very deep. You got it?
That was the first project, Chesapeake Beach.
I'm
We did a
looking.
study.
Okay, got it.
And we're
All right,
doing
got it.
that.
This
and
is
we're doing the dredging this late spring, summer. And then we're doing 2 studies to support these beaches so that
Same
we
way?
can do the same way.
Okay, thank you.
And
Didn't mean
we're
to-
gonna fix our bay beaches by just
I
bringing
missed the
that
first
sand back.
presentation. I was out of the room.
Yes, sir.
So you may be talking about the contributed funds agreement for Lynn Haven dredging that's going to place some sand on Cape
I'm
Henry
good.
Beach.
I'm good. Thank you.
Our beach profile monitoring program, that surveys all of our beaches from Little Creek down to our North Carolina border, or just north of that. It's not only collecting profile data, but we use that data to analyze the condition of the beaches. Shoreline position, volume of material in the system, below the water, above the water, and we use that data to determine useful project life and to plan and program all of our beach nourishment projects. Now, getting into our dredging program, Rudy Inlet Federal Dredging. This CIP covers the cost of maintenance dredging. The Currituck or the Murden, the Army Corps hopper dredge vessels visit about 2 to 3 times a year to remove shoaling in the inlet. And on about a 3-year planned cycle, we come in and they do a contract dredging, which takes a full depth dredging of the inlet. That has not been done in 5 years. The federal government reduced their funding for what they classify as low tonnage inlets or waterways. So we've been trying to keep up and keep ahead with the maintenance visits from the Currituck. They've had to come in more frequently. We've had some severe shoaling situations recently in Rudy Inlet. The good news is they've restored funding for this year for that program for Rudy Inlet and Lynn Haven Inlet. So we're planning for this fall for a full depth dredging of Rudy Inlet. The parent project to that, my pointer, is the pointer up here? That's okay. I'll point, I got a finger I can point with. So this is the Outer Deposition Basin project. This is a city-funded effort. We dredge a sediment sink, if you will, at the end of the entrance channel. The Rudy 2 works almost continuously to bypass material that naturally wants to drift south to north along the beach. The Currituck comes in 2 to 3 times a year, removes shoaling in the inlet, and then on a 3-year cycle, we come in and take that full depth cut. And when the Army Corps does their contact dredging, we piggyback on that contract and we excavate the Outer Deposition Basin. And what that does is it reduces the frequency of shoaling and the amount of visits that the Currituck has to make to the inlet to keep ahead of the shoaling. The replacement of the Rudy Dredge, CIP 8402. This is funding identified out in FY20 for replacement of the Rudy 2. It also is providing funding for major bulkhead repairs at the dredge operations berthing facility at the end of Bells Road. Okay, Lynn Haven Inlet maintenance dredging.
Excuse me, John Earl.
Danny, we had talked at one point when it was time to replace that to go in with something larger that we could actually do sand replenishment on the bay beaches as well. And then do a multi-use is that still under consideration, or is that just cost prohibitive?
Yes, it's under consideration, but it could be cost prohibitive. The answer is, we are recognizing the need for a bigger dredge, but it's what we can afford. We are gonna see what this bid, this RFP, up there on the Bay Beaches produces for us and what the industry can come in for, and maybe the industry can fill that gap, and we may be able to, continue to function. This has no self-power, it's pushed around with push boats. It's just a big old pump on some, in a boat-looking configuration, and it pumps it out and ties into an underground system that goes underneath Rudy and comes out on the beach and pumps it up on, First to Fifth Street in that area there, so.
I bring that up, Mr. Mayor, we've had a couple of times here in the last year, where the shoaling has gotten to be so bad. In fact, we had, the Currituck had some problems in terms of it having to be repaired, the big dredge that we get from the Army Corps. We actually had the Navy SEALs folks doing operations in and out of there, and the shoaling was so bad they couldn't get their big boats in and out of Rudy Inlet. And so I just need for the council to be aware that, you know, that it's impactful. I mean, they've had hazardous navigation, I think, at least 3 times within the last year. We did have one year we had a new pleasure craft that actually had capsized there because
And we got sued.
We've got the right guy at the head of the table to be concerned about these types of issues, but the council needs to be aware that it's problematic, and we gotta have a solution in-house, I think, knowing that the federal stuff can break down or not get here as quickly as possible, that in the case we've got an emergency, that we can get that thing opened up again.
Thank you, Barbara.
I think Dave halfway answered my question. I think you said that when you doing that dredge, you discharge the sand on, you said First to Fifth Street. That truck haul on the Croatan kind of bothers me, because truck haul seems to be a terrible way to do beach replenishment. And if we can use dredge material, it makes all the sense, but truck haul, we're not gonna fill up that ocean.
Well, part of it's the permitting issue, and also the other part is the function of the longshore drift and the direction of it, so.
Yeah, and the reason why we're proposing the truck haul for Croatan Beach is to mobilize a dredge vessel and do an offshore dredge. You have to have a pretty large volume of material to make it economical, and we just don't have that volume necessary for Croatan, so proposing the truck haul. And we will find a source of sand that's compatible with the beach and grain size and color.
Wondering where that was gonna be, okay.
Now, we were talking about Rudy Inlet. Rudy Inlet is a traditional cost share project. The city pays for 28% of the dredging cost for Rudy Inlet. The federal government pays 72%. Lynn Haven is a little bit different. Our obligation for the Lynn Haven federal project is to maintain a marina for one, but we have to incur the cost of placing the dredge material onto the beach or at our Maple Street dredge material storage site. It's another good news story. The federal government did restore funding for this project, but they did not restore enough funding to do a full depth dredging of the entire length of the federal channel. They have provided, or will be providing funding of about $2.5 million to do a full depth dredging of the entire federal channel. They have a shortfall of just over $700,000. So that's where the contributed funds agreement that you may have seen in your Friday package comes in. By the city contributing additional funds that we do have in the budget, we're not asking for any additional appropriation. We'll be able to dredge the Lynn Haven Inlet Federal Channel to its full permitted depth. That'll give us maximum useful life out of this dredging event, and also yield maximum available sand that we're going to place onto Ocean Park Beach. So $550,000 of that contributed funds is for the additional dredging, and $200,000 is to place that additional dredge material onto Ocean Park Beach. And that project is planned for fall of this year.
What is that useful life of the dredging? You said useful life, but you didn't specify the amount. What is that useful life?
Well, it's on a 3-year cycle for contract dredging, so we hopefully we'll get slightly more than that. Various minor dredging. This CIP supports mainly our annual dredging of Crab Creek, the entrance channel to the Lynn Haven Boat Ramp and Beach Facility, and some dredging, some shoaled areas along Long Creek. Just completed last month, and that'll happen again this time next year. Eastern Branch Lynn Haven River Maintenance Dredging. This is the sister project to the Western Branch Lynn Haven River dredging, which we completed in 2016. It's still under design. We have to, now that we're in the mechanical dredging mode, we have to construct an offloading facility that we've identified at Hutton Lane in front of the Pep Boys auto parts store on Virginia Beach Boulevard. We're in the final stages of design and permitting, and hope to get that project out to bid and under construction this spring. And then that'll allow us to submit permits and begin preparing to bid the Eastern Branch Lynn Haven River dredging.
I have a question.
Yes.
When we complete those dredgings, do we use the side scan sonar tows that the police department has to tow those waterways and get a side scan look at what the bottom looks like relative? Do we do, because I know we have the side scan sonar buoys with towed arrays with the police department, and they're designed for that. Do we actually use them as for training and get a side scan look at the bottom after we're finished?
We do a pretty complete in-depth look. There's either single beam technology or triple beam. We don't paint a full color picture of the entire bottom. That's a lot of data to process. But we do verify and in routine segments that we've achieved
Contracting that out, or are
proper
we
depth.
using our stuff that we already own, the police department?
That's part of the dredging contract.
I just throw that out there. We have technology. Sometimes might be a good training exercise.
We did take advantage of that technology in the police department when we were doing some investigation of obstructions out at Pungo Ferry boat ramp when we purchased that property.
Super, thank you.
We did that in-house. Sandbridge Beach access improvements, ongoing project. We've completed 15 access improvements at Sandbridge Beach to date. We have 3 programmed for next fall. Very successful project. Pleasure House Point mitigation. This is a great project. You're probably tired of hearing about this one, but we are eventually going to get this fully permitted and constructed. Right now, our mitigation requirements are satisfied by purchasing credits for mitigation banks outside of the Lynn Haven watershed and banks elsewhere in the state of Virginia, which is not a bad thing, but this is going to allow us to keep our mitigation dollars and achieve water quality benefits in the Lynn Haven. And we are going through our 3rd round of submittal for the mitigation banking instrument with the state review agencies. Hoping that the 3rd time is the charm, we get that approved and can get this project out the door and under construction in the fall. Now, this project, it's fully funded for construction at $3 million. One of the requirements to get approval of the mitigation banking instrument is financial assurances. We have to have a mechanism to receive and reserve funds for perpetual maintenance. We also have a need, tidal wetland credits are becoming scarce, so we are proposing to gain approval to pre-release tidal mitigation credits. So we're asking for a implementation project. This is new, CIP 8024, which will provide implementation funding to allow us to pre-release credits for city projects and to set up a CIP to receive proceeds from sale of city projects for perpetual maintenance. And that is structured at $115,000 for each of the next 5 years.
Question on that, if I
Please.
could?
Yes.
I'm trying to make sure I understand that last part. As we do this, are we releasing, meaning earning credits that we're going to apply to other projects, or that we have paid for credits for some other reason or gain them elsewhere in the state, as you suggested, and we're going to get those credits back to reapply? I'm trying to understand what pre-release of credits really means in an operational context.
Well, the agencies are requiring that we have an account set up and established so that we can pre-release credits. And if we choose, we can debit those credit releases to the projects that consume them as they're consumed and pay that back. But we have to have money appropriated, at least in year 1, to begin pre-release of credit.
Councilmember Marks, there'll be an initial balance. We will have created approximately 10 acres of credit that we bank, and then we'll draw down off of those 10
And that's what this
acres.
does.
And that's what this does.
Okay, I'm just
We're-
trying to understand what that meant. Thank you very much. I was the only one that didn't understand.
Thank you, Phil. Moving on to our neighborhood dredging program. Just want to give an overview of the current status. We've completed 4 projects to date. We have 1 underway or out to bid at Chesapeake and Colony. We were receiving bids on that March 20th, and we're in the permitting phases for Gills Cove and Herds Cove. We have 2 projects that we received the permission to move into the petition phase. Those petition packages are being prepared for Brock Cove and Buchanan Creek West. And we have 3 neighborhoods that we have briefed, and they've indicated they want to move to a petition phase, Dix Creek, which will be going for the second iteration, Seabreeze Cove and Shilling Point. So I'll go through those projects real quick. Old Donation Creek was our first completed project back in spring of 2016. No wetland impacts or mitigation requirements, no oyster leases. It was a great project. Bayville Creek, we had a little bit of an issue with an oyster lease. We had some mitigation to deal with. Project cost came in higher than originally designed and contemplated, so we had to do a rate adjustment for the SSD rate this year from 36.3 cents to 47.2 cents per hundred of assessed value, and looking for the next cycle to occur in about FY23. Then Shadow Lawn is over in the Lynn Basin.
Rudy.
I'm sorry, Rudy. Thank you, Rudy. We have a dredge disposal area in Lake Rudy, so we're still able to do hydraulic dredging for our 2 projects in the Rudy Inlet Basin. So we completed Shadow Lawn in 2017. And we also successfully completed Harbor Point in 2017. And we combined that with some dredging in Lake Wesley. Sorry, I got a little bit. So we combined Shadow Lawn, Harbor Point, Lake Wesley, got a good economy of scale, and we're able to spread out the mobilization cost for those projects. And this is our big one coming up. Chesapeake and Colony, by far our largest project, 131 participants out the bid. Like I said, we're receiving bids on the 20th. No oyster lease issues for Chesapeake and Colony. And anxiously looking forward to getting this project underway this year. We have 2 more projects that are approved are in the permitting phase. Gills Cove. We have obtained consent from an oyster lease holder at the entrance to Gills Cove, so we've cleared that hurdle with this project. And we have to wait until the dredge transfer facility is completed to bid this. We anticipate bidding this project for early 2019, along with Herds Cove. Herds Cove, we also have obtained consent from an oyster lease holder at the entrance to Herds Cove, but we have some other lease areas on some of the branch coves that we have some issues with oyster leases that we still have to overcome to be able to fully dredge the entire project. So that is all of that's the update on the neighborhood dredging projects. And just to summarize and wrap up, emerging issues and needs, continuation of funding for shore protection program is critical to provide storm damage reduction benefits. Beach nourishment is even more critical. It's the first line of defense for sea level rise. And we expect that interest and adoption of new neighborhood dredging SSDs to increase as we successfully complete more projects.
John, did you have a question?
I did. I was just curious, in new petitioners and a lot of the new tax code and the cap of $10,000 on combination of state income tax and property tax, I was just curious how that goes back to your petitioning, because now people are facing pretty substantial bills and there's no federal tax consideration for that. If they go over the 10,000 threshold between property taxes and income, that's not a subsidized cost. I didn't curious to hear any feedback, and you say expansion. I didn't curious if people are recognizing that or not.
Yeah, I haven't heard any direct feedback, but you're exactly right.
Yeah, I meant was recognizing before they signed, is what I was referring to.
They'll definitely recognize it.
Tax on tax, it gets tight.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
No, sir. Thank you, Dan, very much. Good presentation. Economic vitality. Where's Kathy Warren? We're rolling.
So what's going to happen here, Mayor, is Kathy's going to lead out with the economic vitality projects, and then 2/3 of the way through, she's going to flip that to Ron, and your last brief is an update on the sports center, and Ron's going to jump in there and pick up all the entertainment district projects so that he can answer any questions that you might have as he lays those out.
All right, Kathy, we're glad to have you.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. I'll be presenting the proposed economic and tourism development CIP projects for FY 2019 through 2024.
Look how messy it is.
Just to discuss a few accomplishments from the past year. Parking Management launched the Park Plus modeling software this year in partnership with Kimley Horn. This has been a great tool in right-sizing our parking garages so that we don't overbuild or underbuild the parking for such developments as the Dome site or sports center projects. All of the boardwalk lighting in the connector parks up to 40th Street will be complete. 29th Street construction is well underway with completion anticipated this spring, and the contract for Phase 1 of the Burton Station and Tolliver Roads has been awarded. Construction will begin in April. The Economic Development Investment Program was successful in leveraging over $131 million in private investment by providing $3.8 million in grants. And the average salary for new jobs created was $54,000. We have 21 projects proposed within the 6-year available funding. 6 of those are fully funded in previous years. 3 are completed and/or deleted projects. 8 projects funded within the FY19 available funding. 7 projects funded in previous years with a request to increase funding, and then 6 projects with above available funding requests. Here are our projects fully funded in previous years, and I'll go into more detail in the upcoming slides. Rail to Trail Corridor Development. This is formerly known as the Transit Corridor Development. Program funding at $1 million. Has a proposed scope to include developing a low-cost approach to improving right-of-way for pedestrian, bicycle, and other compatible uses. To plan and coordinate utilities and technology infrastructure improvements. Identify how and where to remove old rail infrastructure. Leverage existing capital funding to maximize grant opportunities and partnerships, and plan to build this out in phases. Next, London Bridge Commerce Center infrastructure program funding at just under $2.1 million. We're awaiting Navy approval for the access easement before we can begin work for the road and utilities. Economic development.
Well, that was done, the Navy.
No, sir. They have consented to allow us through this area coming off adjacent to here. Unfortunately, as we got into the CIP, the costs associated with developing this far exceeds this number here. And so we're looking at another access of potentially being able to come after you get here off of Potters and at the end of the residential area, outside the residential area, potentially petitioning, and I've asked the team to go back and talk to the Navy about coming off Potters Road and coming straight into this, to the site through this venue here.
Okay,
This,
well,
this
I
cost
think we-
here exceeds this by
All right.
more than 2.5 times, and I can't see putting the money into such a small corporate park for that kind of money.
Didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, not at all. Okay, on to Burton Station roadway improvements, Phase 1. The contractors will begin this project in April for the new Burton Station and Tolliver Roads. This will provide access for the new fire station, pump station, and multifamily development. On to Burton Station roadway improvements, Phase 3. Program funding at $10.1 million. This is for the new portion of Tolliver Road from the railroad crossing to Air Rail Avenue and over to Thurston Avenue. Design is currently at 60%. 19th Street infrastructure improvements allows for wider sidewalks, pedestrian lighting, street trees, and the undergrounding of utilities, making a walkable connection between the convention center and the Dome site. Construction will begin in the spring and go through the spring of 2020. 29th Street Streetscape Improvements Project. funded at $2.5 million, will add wider sidewalks, street trees, and drainage improvements. Construction is underway and will be completed in May of 2018. We have 3 completed or deleted projects. 19th Street corridor improvements. This is funded at $12.7 million. Land acquisition, various studies and design for the corridor have been completed. This is closed out. On to 9015, the arena infrastructure site improvements. This has been deleted. And 9017, arena infrastructure development offsite, has been deleted. For proposed projects funded within available funding for FY19, we have 8 projects for a total of $14.9 million. Winston-Salem improvements, programmed at $8.3 million. Design is at 60%. This is for a new 2-lane roadway with on-street parking, sidewalks, pedestrian lighting, landscaping, as well as water, sewer, and stormwater improvements. Construction is anticipated to occur between November of 2019 and April of 2021. Vibe District Street Infrastructure Improvements Project. This is a sister project to 9100 19th Street Improvements, programmed at $8.8 million. This improves the streetscape by providing new sidewalks, on-street parking, as well as utility and traffic upgrades. 18th Street construction will begin October 2018, and 17th Street design will soon be at 30%. On to Lynn Haven Parkway Corridor, programmed at $4 million. Project is currently in design and will commence construction late summer, early fall. New streetscape improvements with new sidewalks, medians, pedestrian lighting, landscaping, bus shelters, and signage. The Lynn Haven Business Association.
This is Shannon's project,
Yeah,
right? So we'll
right.
just say very good.
she's not here, then-
She's not here.
It's a shame she couldn't be here for this.
Yeah.
We'll have to cancel it.
So we just put that money over.
Let's move it.
We are working with the Lynn Haven Business Association as they're working through a rebranding exercise for the corridor. For the Oceana and ITA Conformity and Acquisition 2 project, program funding at $10.2 million. Acquisition of property and easements to complete program goals of converting land to compatible uses is ongoing. To date, $130 million has been spent in the APZ1 and ITA areas, resulting in a reduction of 717 dwelling units. Oceanfront Parking Facilities Capital Maintenance and Development Project, program funding at $8.85 million. Project funding increased in FY19 by $418,421 from insurance recovery from the 31st Street garage fire last year. This fire damage has been repaired, as well as repairs made to the 31st Street garage elevator. Town Center Garage and Plaza Capital Maintenance Project. This is program funding at $5.5 million. This CIP addresses capital maintenance and repairs for the 5 garages in Town Center. All garages at Town Center are currently undergoing repairs for rust, potholes, and water penetration. Oceanfront Capital Projects Reinvestment, programmed at $7.15 million. This funding helps to reinvest in our oceanfront by improving the lighting, replacing benches, pavers, sidewalks, and street canopies. We're in the process of completing the replacement of lighting in the remaining connector parks from 19th to 40th Streets, and we'll be repairing the 7th Street canopy this spring.
My neighbors that love the new streetlights.
Oh, good.
I get so many compliments. I really love them.
That's great.
For the Economic Development Investment Program with program funding at $67 million, this program will continue to provide grants in an effort to attract new businesses into the city. Economic Development provided $3.8 million in EDIP grants, incentivizing over $131 million in private investment this past year. On to proposed projects funded in previous years with above available funding requests. We have 7 of these projects. For Historic Kempsville, programmed at $2.5 million, we are requesting an additional $2 million in FY19 for property acquisition. Property acquisition, gateway signage, beautification, and placemaking efforts are ongoing. To date, $380,000 has actually been spent on walkways, ADA ramps, mounted signs, planting at Kemp's Landing Park, and gateway signage. Virginia Beach Bioinfrastructure includes funding for the design and construction of a 2-lane undivided parkway, including utility infrastructure. We are requesting an increase in FY19 for $360,000 to fund construction of a new outfall for the Biopark BMP that was found to be undersized, and for funding to study the park in its entirety to save on future design and engineering. APZ1 economic incentives. The goal here is to continue to incentivize compatible businesses. Virginia Beach doesn't have an enterprise zone, and this program enables us to compete for new capital investment in areas that are restricted by the APZ1 zoning ordinance and/or Navy easement. We are requesting an additional $1 million in FY19 funding to support ongoing goals of the program. And I'm going to skip over the Sports Center slide because Ron's going to speak a little bit more in detail further in the presentation. Strategic Growth Areas projects. This funding request is for $250,000 a year, and it allows the SGA to provide support to other city departments, including the city manager's office, when planning services are needed for development projects within the SGAs. In the past year alone, the CIP has paid for environmental studies, housing studies, appraisals, property acquisitions in Burton Station, planning efforts to activate Atlantic Avenue, and updates to the Northampton SGA plan. Our next effort is to complete a redevelopment plan for the Central Village area in the Pembroke SGA. The allocation of funding in FY19 through 24 will allow the SGA to continue to provide services to help the redevelopment efforts move forward in our city. Cape Henry Lighthouse, a restoration project for this lighthouse. This increase in funding for $150,000 is to address cost increases in construction due to schedule delays associated with securing grant funding. The Virginia Beach Amphitheater capital maintenance, a request for an additional $210,000 in FY19 to construct additional gravel overflow parking, which will address a critical parking shortage. This funding was requested but not approved in FY 2018. Projects requested above available funding. We have 6 of these. I'll speak to the first 2. 17th Street improvements. This project is at 30% design through 9020. This project will fund the rest of the design and construction. It extends from Cypress to Pacific and calls for wider sidewalks, street trees, bicycle lanes, and 4 lanes of traffic. This project continues efforts made by the city to improve the streetscapes within the Vibe District.
Why am I thinking we had a pilot program, John, that we were going to try to get a block done sooner on 17th Street? Did that not come about?
We haven't funded that yet.
Okay, all right.
I mean, that's what you saw was the preliminary design is all that's been done yet so far.
Thank you.
Town Center reinvestment. This project is similar to the 9096 Oceanfront Capital Projects reinvestment. The Central Business District Association has requested that the city establish funding to continue to reinvest in Town Center and improve the wayfinding, streetscape, and placemaking efforts.
This over and above the Special Service District and the TIF they already have, they're wanting general fund money?
No, sir, this is part of the SSD.
Okay, so they just need to tax themselves to provide for it.
Correct.
Okay, I'm just trying, when the way she said that, it was unclear. Making sure I understand.
Working through an MOU conversation with them.
So Town Center is now 18 years old and needs to remain an attractive destination in our city. Funding is proposed from the Special Service District.
Part of the idea.
Thank you, Kathy, very much.
Before she goes, I have a couple of questions if it'd be appropriate.
Certainly.
I wanted to go back to, we talked about we deleted the 2 projects. It makes sense. That was all debt that was gonna be financed by the TIP fund. So now, when we reallocated that debt for other projects in there, was all the reallocation of that debt also gonna be TIP funded? or has some of that debt been allocated to, that's going to be funded from the general fund or other trustee accounts?
We have maintained our long-term debt metrics within your guidelines, and the tip money is going to be repurposed, and a lot of what you're going to get right here is the repurposing of that tip money.
Tip money, I'm referring to the actual debt itself. Is
Right.
all the debt that was allocated to be financed by tip funding in this program being reallocated to projects that are only being funded by tip funding? Or was some of that debt reallocated to projects that are funded by something other than the tip fund itself?
The money is being reallocated to tip and staying in tip. And the debt capacity that I think you're referring to here,
Well, I'm just referring to to go back and look at that those two things we deleted one was $49 million and one was, it cannot be 79.3, give plus some
Check.
change. So what I'm really asking,
19th Street was carried over into the program now, and the remaining monies are being allocated into other projects
that are tip funded.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
that's what I want to know.
Yes, sir.
Now, coming back to the one that's, the transit, the rail corridor, I'll certainly be looking. I think when we look at things that could benefit our citizens in a lot of ways, maybe this is in the wrong part of the budget maybe, but I think that's something we should look to move faster pace than we are, given some other things that we've done. I'll certainly be looking for offsets to help us do that, because I think that's something important, that we could move at a faster pace in terms of what it could mean to the city. And everybody knows my position on SGAs. I think we're throwing money down a rat hole, but nonetheless.
And we appreciate that comment.
Trails make sense.
Barbara?
I would just say, and this can be my liaison report from Bikes and Trails, and Wayne Wilcox mentioned this last week, that this is a high priority in the thought of the Bikes and Trails Committee, that if, in the interim, until something else is decided there, if there could be some use of that property for some trails that would
Be great.
low impact and so forth. So that's pretty much come out of the Bikes and Trails Committee and so forth.
Agreed.
Thank you, Kathy. Ron, you're up, buddy.
Yes, sir. And last comment about this is the idea is that rather than have requests on an ad hoc basis, that we build in a program on a regular basis with a line item that can cover multi-year requests such as phasing of the wayfinding or tree pits or new benches and things of that nature. So that's the idea behind that one. It's just that we can plan better. So I'm going to cover 4 additional projects above the available funding, but as Kathy mentioned, we're going to come back to the Sports Center because as getting into the preliminary and interim design, of course, the consideration that we had before about the consideration for a track component is what we've been down in the weeds on. In fact, we had a half-day design session this morning, a whole day's session 2 weeks ago. We've been meeting every couple weeks, even while we were waiting for the interim agreement to be adopted so that we could understand some of the elements there. As a reminder, the basic of the program is that we were looking very much at court sports, and that we have, Nancy Hellman's with me here from CB. We have 17 existing events that we have that are in the convention center, and that's about 68,000 or so room nights a year. So our ability to add the track component does 2 things. 1, it brings a whole new market, and 2, it allows us to expand the capacity of the court sports from what we're looking at, the basic footprint of 12 basketball courts, for example, as the template. When you add the addition of that auxiliary space, you add that ability to expand your courts, your mats, or have dual events because some of these overlap. Predominantly the business, of course, is in the business, the season that we've been looking for that year-round destination, which is not summertime. And so this does that. This is an example of the type of venue that we're talking about. This happens to be Liberty University. The track itself, the vendor that we've been discussing with through MEB and Clark Nexon, Hanbury is the same track, and this is what you see is an articulated service here that has the ability for it's better on the joints for the runners and faster times, and so that's why indoor track is one of the fastest growing markets in this indoor sports area. Liberty, this was a high school track meet. Of course, in Birmingham, Alabama, you have the NCAA championships. I'll note that this is in a neighborhood with very few hotels around it. We have an opportunity, again, to attract a market here. And the type of venue, this is University of Michigan, one of the most recent tracks that's just been installed. This is the look of what we're building a preliminary design on, where you do have a requirement for tournaments, whether they're conference tournaments or the NCAA divisionals or the championship, that you have a minimum amount of seating. Just to give you a sense of that roof, that's the type of design element that we're looking at for it. The track and court surfaces together are more than 250,000 square feet. And so as we look at this design element and the market opportunity, if you did both of them, we're looking at growing from 17 to 63 potential events a year, and from 68,000 room nights to 144,000 estimated room nights a year. And so when one of the track events comes, and we're looking at 19 potential events, for example, on the track, we're talking 5, 6, 7, upwards of 10,000 that are coming for that event. And so we wanted to get, while we are in...
I just wish I'd known more about this before we got into the arena. I'm telling you, this really, I'm serious about this. I'm telling you, this is something that is really, really good.
So even though this was a programmed facility, we want to be proactive today to start to give you some sense of what we're seeing in all of these conceptual designs, and that we wanted to get on the table. And so that's the purpose of even ahead of the manager's budget. So we're still working through, it looks like it's somewhere in the range of 10 to 15 million additional. That's a range right now. And we want to build the right facility.
John?
So it'll continue to evolve.
Ron, if you add the track in there and you add that additional square footage, how many additional basketball courts can you come into with that additional sizing?
About 10, yeah.
So almost
Yeah.
doubling the size.
Yeah.
So that's pretty amazing. Todd, I see you.
Yeah.
Bobby D.
Yeah, I think
Bring us some
a
money.
lot of the feedback I'm getting from folks in my district and around city, this project really makes a lot of sense for a lot of ways. Not only bring outside people in, but also give other, we could also create other organization and group sports-minded volleyball leagues, basketball leagues and everything. Not only, and we've still got Lansdowne available too. So what we're doing is we're creating a synergy here that we could really become a sports mecca right here, on the East Coast.
And I like the way it's paid for, too.
Yeah, I do like that.
Thank you.
I've done this before. Not the first time. But we get the budget, will we be showing in the out years?
Call for the question.
I always have questions.
The operating subsidy?
No, not the operating subsidy. I want to know
I know what he's gonna let
the
that
total
slip away.
ownership cost, and are we programming for the operational cost once the facility comes online and showing that impact on the budget?
We believe this is,
Be honest with ourselves.
our goal here with the sports center is a break-even operation. We feel like we're going to easily meet the break-even, and it'll generate its own revenues for both operational and then creating the fund balance for a reserve account for recapitalization.
I was just going to say,
The-
don't
the-
skimp on the recap part, like a lot of people do.
Yes,
Agreed.
yes, sir. But
Agreed.
remember, this is all about the incentivized economic returns to the entire resort industry.
Got to call for the question.
Okay, go for it today.
Mr. Moss, to your point,
The table.
we are trying to sequentially put,
Was the microphone on?
I've said it other places, not the first time.
okay, so we're gonna get all these people here, but then we need something for them to do, right? That's part of the entertainment district. So understanding what the concept that we have on the table for the dome site, there are elements that we envision that are part of the infrastructure package that's to be considered. So one piece is the 19th Street project stops at Arctic Avenue. It does not go all the way to Pacific. So there is consideration of the streetscapes and the redevelopment that has to happen in those, particularly in the two eastern blocks that we need to go ahead and budget for. And so we have a planned amount of about $7.5 million that we think that's those common spaces, streetscapes, and infrastructure around that and through that block. The second piece is the entertainment venue that we've discussed. Interestingly, if you go back to the 2002 recommendation for the Sandler Center, they made an additional recommendation in that the Sandler Center was a replacement for the Pavilion Theater, but that a tourist destination for a roadhouse, as they called it, of 2,500 to 3,000, 2,500 to 3,500 seats would be a tourist draw, and it should be at the resort, and it should be embedded in a development with a partner that can operate it. So keeping with that, and we do have the study that's being done as part of the Dome site that will validate that recommendation as well. But that's the purpose here, is we believe at the square footage, at the size, if we look most recently at the Anthem that was built at the Wharf in Washington, D.C., which is the model for this general admission style, 3-tier with some seats, completely flexible, being able to do TED Talks or concerts or wrestling events. Theirs was 60 million at 6,000 people, and so we think that the estimate we've been carrying in our concept as we negotiate with Venture Realty, we think we're definitely in the ballpark here of what it would take to own that type of entertainment venue as part of that nugget. Again, we get the people here with Sports Center, we get additional people coming because we have this type of entertainment that is not in our market at this time.
John, are the funding source for that, Ron?
TIP fund, yes, sir.
TIP fund, Mr. Mayor. Yeah.
My concern is, and I said this before, this is not one that I think that competes with debt that we should use for flooding projects. And if we can accommodate and treat our people right with the flooding projects that we have, but it gets back to that chart I've asked for over and over again. What's the debt capacity that we have, and are we allocating it to the right things? I think this is a competition for debt capacity, not about source of funding.
Okay.
Next one, of course, parking. We talk parking all the time when we talk the entertainment district. And so what we're suggesting here is that Central Beach Resort parking project that gives us, like we discussed a couple weeks ago, the ability to make sure that we're buying parking with the projects, but also opportunistically as the private sector is redeveloping the parcels that we have the ability to buy some spaces. We think at this volume, we have the ability to get Central Beach parking strategy nailed down at this volume of upwards of 60 million.
Yes, John. What's the bill payer for that one, Mr. Mayor?
This is TIP fund, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Again, parking system managed by the city is our goal here. And then lastly, we've discussed over the past several weeks, want to go ahead and program in what our estimate is for the replacement of the pier at $21.5 million would be the last project that's above last year's projects.
Thank you. Questions or comments, please? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so March 15th, we're going to be having this session
Yes, ma'am.
to look at these essentially 4 projects all together.
Right.
And we're going to be talking not only about what they're going to be, but what the funding is
Yes, ma'am.
for all of them,
Yes, ma'am.
so that all that information is out. I would just say over the weekend in reading the CIP and also reading the rating agencies' comments about Virginia Beach in relation to the bond sale, I really think, you know, what these rating agencies have to say is important for the public to know. And, you know, I kind of looking to see whether or not I'm going to be supportive of these or not. I just have to say how impressive it was to continually hear military and tourism as our economic drivers. And I really think these analyses by the bond rating agencies is important to share with the public. I think when they have analyzed the city's financial situation and so forth, you know, I kept here reading very strong, conservative, and so forth. And so I think all of these and how they measure and how they stack up to what's in these documents would be important to look at.
Right. And the experience I've had through the years of going to the rating agencies, 6 or 7 years in a row, twice a year, is they're also all wanting to understand what are you doing to sustain that economy that you have? Are you reinvesting in it? And that's the point with this package.
Of course, they also mention the fact that we are looking at the sea level rise question and so forth, which I think, you know, is certainly the thing that they're going to be measuring. But I think the very fact that we're doing that you know, they seem to be acknowledging is something that makes us more responsible. And so I think looking at all these things, and in the flooding and all these other things, you have to look at all of it, and I think they really touched on it. And this is, you know, since this is pretty timely, you know, for them to have come up with this in relation to this bond sale, which just occurred last week.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you so much, Ron. Kathy, thank you again. Are you gonna do the interim term sheet? Yes, sir. All right.
Very briefly, we did touch on this a few weeks ago, but I just wanted to remind you one more time before we take a vote, which would be scheduled for the 20th. This is the additional interim agreement for the operator. We've selected Eastern Sports Management as a recommended operator. The purpose of the interim agreement would be to make sure that we get to a comprehensive agreement to operate and manage the sports facility for a maximum of 20 years. The interim agreement itself, as far as the effective date, would carry through the fall, but we certainly expect that would be negotiated, the terms would be negotiated prior to summer. And so the key work items and the need for the interim agreement is that we need the potential operator also to be at the design table and to share their expertise on operations and design. And so we do have a consideration for a consulting fee for their time and their intellectual property that they may be bringing to the table. We need to develop an operations pro forma. Eastern Sports has already been working with Nancy on some of those ideas. How would you staff it? How do we jointly market it? The consideration of an engagement fee, and what we're looking at is that risk model we discussed before. Is it all on the operator to perform, or do we see a different model that the city is sharing in risk? And so we'll get into the details of that in the coming months. And then basically to develop the operating agreement, that would be essentially the major piece of the comprehensive agreement is what is this 20-year relationship that we have. And so the next steps are that we'll have it docketed for March 20th, Council.
Questions or comments?
Just one, I like the fact that you shortened the lease requirement, because I think that makes a lot of sense.
Oh, I didn't hear
Long
you.
leases, I really like the shorter 20-year lease over the 40 and 30. I think I applaud you for that.
All right. Very good. I think, all right, thank you. We'll do it on the March. See you on March 20th.
Yes, sir.
All right, folks. We're getting down here to City Council liaison reports. Do I have any? I don't have any. City Council comments. Yes, sir, Mr. Dyer.
Centerville and Kempsville are scheduled for a town hall meeting at Tallwood High School at 6:30 on April 12th. And we're gonna have a budget presentation, and we usually have, a number of the department heads come out and answer questions. Everybody is invited to that. And Jesse, you want to give an update on the food truck meeting we had the other day?
Sure. Yeah, Bobby and I have had 2 meetings so far. I've been really in the weeds with the food truck owners. I think you've been more in the weeds with the restaurant owners and talking to what they want. And I mean, it looks like everybody's on the same page. I didn't get any vibe of any kind of contention. So I mean, I know that we had discussed probably bringing a resolution to council before Memorial Day.
Yeah. Thank you for your all's hard work on that. Appreciate it. Yes, sir.
I said one, I know I shared it with you, Mr. Mayor. I know we're holding our budget hearing at the Pavilion, and it starts at 6 o'clock. That is not the easiest place for people to get to when 40% of our people live in Norfolk and get there by 6 o'clock in the evening. That is a tough road to hoe, I can tell you that. So either one, I think we need to advance the time when we start, a little maybe 6:30 versus 6. But that's just a long distance for people to make from where they come from. We got 20% work in Chesapeake, 40% of our people work out in Norfolk the other way. That's a lot of commuting to be doing at that hour of the day and get at the convention by 6 o'clock. I would ask consideration. I don't think it'll affect a lot of people, but at least it shows we're sensitive to what it takes to move around the city, and we would start at 6:30 by 6 o'clock if we're not going to move the location. That's just a request.
Is there anything magic about 6 o'clock?
Staff will be available for the council. You pick the time.
Well, can we not get a high school?
High schools are booked.
I'll be darned. Can we get another day?
Yeah, because that's the fourth Thursday in April, and my every month district
I know we
forum.
went through this last year, we didn't have time to adjust them, but now we do.
Yeah, see if we
7
get another
o'clock
day,
today.
please, and location at a high school.
I think Atlantic Shores can hold a number of people. We've had some town halls and events there that were, there's adequate
Let's not
seating.
go to the,
I'll look at another day.
All right, so let's see what we can do. Other city council, yes, Barbara, you told me.
I had mentioned at the retreat that we were looking at putting together a symposium, and it's coming together really well. It's April 19th. It would be at the Convention Center, and this would be called the North Landing Albemarle Pamlico Symposium, A Shared Vision. We are developing a very good collaborative relationship with municipalities, with agencies, with the academic institutions, as well as nonprofits. I think we're going to have some real good presenters that day. VIMS is very much a part of this with us, as our Virginia Wesleyan and some other academics, as well as the Albemarle Pamlico Commission, and I think it's coming together, and I hope you all will put out April 19th, and at some time during the day, you could be a part of it with us.
Thank you very much. Other comments? Okay. How about the agenda review, sir?
Okay, we don't have any planning items, but we have ordinance and resolutions.
Yeah, we do.
Anybody got any comments on any of them?
I'm voting no on 5, and the reason being is I believe that since the risk management fund is designed to charge each and every department their share of the risk pool, that rather than going to the general fund for reserve for that $1 million, we should have gone to the individual departments, looked for their under execution, and assessed those departments accordingly and maintain the integrity of how the fund is funded.
So everyone's in agreement except for no on number 5 for Mr. Moss. Is that correct? Very good. Also, council, just to give you a heads up, which I will make this statement again before we start the public comment. I've heard from, my office has heard from representatives wanting more time to speak tonight, and we are going to hold to 3 minutes for everybody. We have done that very well over the years, and we will be very fair, I assure you. Thank you.
Could I just ask, are we planning to have anyone make some comments before it starts? I was thinking maybe Mark might be the right person to just give a very brief overview of what these alternatives are and are not, so that we just have some kind of framework for people to comment on, some kind of background.
Might be nice just to have a handout.
Well, it's kind of late to do that.
We
Print 'em
talked
out.
about that at the
Print 'em out, so
retreat.
when they hand in, they can look at them.
If we know that we've got a bunch of speakers to have, it doesn't have to be long, but for 5 minutes to have staff actually go
Frame
through,
the-
I think
frame the
it's a great
question.
idea,
Bet in
Barbara.
5 minutes, I'll buy you dinner.
Well, should what's being talked about at the state be presented to? Because a lot of the stuff we're talking about is going to be null and void, perhaps.
Well, I think that's probably part of it.
I mean, if we
Well,
can get it
that's
done
my point.
quickly, because there's a lot of people.
Yeah, we got to do it in 5 minutes or less.
But why have the public come up and speak to things that they may be educated on, that they may change what it is that they want to say or whatever based on what the fact pattern is as of today? And
I think the very fact that, these people have been told we're trying to stop all rentals, we're going to cause.
Okay, I get that, I get that.
Let's just say this is
But-
what it does.
But also 1 minute on the legislation that's up there
Yeah.
currently, that's been approved through committee.
What's the latest?
Has it
We
been?
have that one page, it
No,
shows all 3 alternatives.
It wasn't approved like last week.
I haven't seen the latest version until
Or,
now.
I mean,
I haven't seen
How
the bill.
Take long to run off 200 copies.
It's going to conference.
It's gone to conference. Both Senate and
That one page.
Okay,
of the handout,
well, then we'll
all
just
3 alternatives.
go through the 3 scenarios if you would. That would be fine. And acknowledge it, what there is.
The three initial scenarios in the
Yes.
planning commission's version?
Yes.
So those 4?
And then if you'd be kind of say, and there is, not discussion, but action going on in Richmond that we do not know what is going to be the outcome. But could override whatever we did. Please put that in there.
I will endeavor to do my best. I will tell you, I had not prepared in anticipation of that request, and I guess that's error on my part, but,
Got an hour.
Yeah, you'll be fine.
Everything is
We
definitely.
have been through it a lot, and I know you got it. And it's not, it's just a short presentation. Okay, council, why don't we why don't we come back here at 5 o'clock and I'll go into closed session.
If you go into closed session now, can you do that? And I can set up.
Oh, sure.
I've
I'll be
prepared
happy to.
for a long evening. I've had you here since 2:30, and we have some nourishment for you to
Okay, the
continue on
chair
into
will
the
entertain a
night.
motion to recess into a closed session pursuant to the exemptions from open meetings allowed by section 2.2-3711A Code of Virginia as amended for following purposes. Legal matters, consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel pursuant to section 2.2-3711A7 peer project. Personnel matters, discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of any public body pursuant to section 2.2-3711A1, council appointments, council boards, commissions, committees, authorities, agencies, and appointees. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Have a motion, second, is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Ms. Henley?
Aye.
Mr. Dyer?
Aye.
Mr. Moss?
Aye.
Mr. Davenport?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Ms. Kane? Mr. Kern?
Aye.
Mr. Wood?
Aye.
Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Jones?
Aye.
Mayor Sessions?
Aye.
And Ms.